Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, June 14th, 2016. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Avalos? Avalos present. President Breed?
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos?
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell? Farrell present. Supervisor Kim? Kim present. Supervisor Marr?
Here.
Marr present. Supervisor Peskin? Peskin present. Supervisor Tang? Tang not present. Supervisor Wiener? Present. Wiener present. Supervisor Yee? Yee present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any changes to the May 10th, 2016 board meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Supervisor Campos, seconded by Supervisor Marr. Colleagues, can we take this without objection? Without objection, those meeting minutes will pass after public comment. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the first item.
The special order at 2 p.m. is the appearance by the Honorable Mayor Edwin Lee. There being no questions submitted, Mayor Lee may address the board for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, and we are now joined by Supervisor Katie Tang as well. Mr. Mayor, you have remarks.
Thank you, Madam President, and Board of Supervisors, members of the public. Thank you for being here today. I'd like to begin today's question time session with a moment of silence for the victims of the terrible and hateful attack in Orlando. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. Well, this past weekend reminds us that our work is far from over. People with hate in their hearts can access guns and cause harm to innocent people. We need to make more progress on gun control, keeping assault weapons out of the hands of criminals and terrorists. We need to make more progress on protecting life and the life and liberty of our gay, our lesbian, our bisexual, and transgendered brothers and sisters. We grieve for the victims of the Orlando shooting, and Sunday night's vigil in the Castro and subsequent march to City Hall was a moving show of solidarity. San Francisco stands together against hatred and violence wherever it occurs. We are, as a city, a beacon for many in our LGBT community across the country and certainly across the world. And this month, we'll be prouder than ever of who we are and what that means by being the beacon that we represent. We are already hard at work protecting San Francisco for upcoming Pride activities. Security remains a priority for our city, and we're working closely with the San Francisco Pride organizers and our public safety agencies, along with federal and state partners, in a coordinated effort to make sure anyone who attends our renowned San Francisco Pride celebrations can freely express themselves. Supervisors, then turning our attention back to the issues in our own city for a moment, we know that neighborhood crime is up. In every neighborhood I visit across all of our districts, I hear about it. And if it's car break-ins, people not feeling safe walking down the streets, home burglaries, home invasions. And supervisors, I know you hear about it too, and because many of you urged me to address street behavior and neighborhood crime in my budget. And I heard you, and I heard all of our constituents, and this is why my budget proposal included the hiring and training of additional police officers for our neighborhoods. I've also said that fighting crime is a shared responsibility of our police department and of our citizens. And just as we did with our successful graffiti advisory board, we need community members to participate in the solutions to neighborhood crime. So today I'm introducing an ordinance to create the Neighborhood Crime Advisory Board. And just like we did with the graffiti board, we'll invite community leaders to join with city department staff to identify public safety priorities and craft community-driven solutions. We'll work with neighborhood organizers to make sure that crimes like car break-ins are being investigated and prosecuted, and when the time comes, we'll make sure the victims of these crimes have a chance to stand up in court and testify. So working together with our police department and neighborhood leaders, we can turn the tide of neighborhood crime and make San Francisco a safer and cleaner city for everyone to enjoy. And with that, since there are no questions, I thank you for your time, Supervisors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now we'll move on with our agenda. Madam Clerk, can you please read the consent agenda?
Items 1 and 2 are on consent. These items are considered routine. If a member objects, an item may be removed and considered separately.
See no names on the roster. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the consent calendar, Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
These ordinances are finally passed unanimously. Item number 3.
Item 3 is an ordinance to appropriate $207 million of revenue bond proceeds to the Municipal Transportation Agency for transportation projects and equipment in fiscal year 2016-2017.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance finally passes unanimously. Item 4.
Item 4 is an ordinance to appropriate approximately $6 million to the Municipal Transportation Agency, consisting of $3,050,000 in total general fund contribution in combination with several other sources to support planning, design, and outreach for the transportation capital improvement projects in connection with the proposed Golden State Warriors Event Center and mixed-use development in Mission Bay.
Roll call vote.
On item 4, Supervisor Avalos.
No.
Avalos, no. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 10 ayes and 1 no, with Supervisor Avalos in the dissent.
The ordinance finally passes. Item number 5, please.
Item 5 is an ordinance to deappropriate approximately $7.6 million in surplus revenue designated for general reserve from the public library and to reappropriate it as debt service payment in fiscal year 2015 through 16.
Roll call vote.
On item 5, Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The ordinance finally passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, please read items 6 through 11 together.
Item 6 is an ordinance to appropriate proceeds from revenue bonds, state loans or grant funds, water revenues, and water capacity fees of $272 million, and to reappropriate $84 million for water capital improvements in fiscal years 2016 through 17 and 2017 through 18 for the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, or the SFPUC. Item 7 is an ordinance to appropriate revenue bonds, state loans or grants, wastewater revenues, and capacity fees in an amount of $102 billion, and to reappropriate $7 million and deappropriate approximately $10.8 million in wastewater capital improvements for the PUC in fiscal years 2016 through 17 and 2017 through 18. Item 8 is an ordinance to appropriate a total of $158 million of Hetch-Hetchy revenue, cap and trade revenue, and power and water revenue bonds for the SFPUC Hetch-Hetchy capital improvement program, and to reappropriate $11.3 million in power revenue bond project fund projects, and to deappropriate $4.3 million of CEC loan and revenue funded projects. Item 9 is an ordinance to authorize the issuance and sale of tax-exempt or taxable wastewater revenue bonds and other forms of indebtedness by the SFPUC in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $1.1 billion to finance the costs of various capital wastewater projects benefiting the wastewater enterprise. Item 10 is an ordinance to authorize the issuance and sale of tax-exempt or taxable water revenue bonds and other forms of indebtedness by the SFPUC in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $265 million to finance the costs of various capital water projects benefiting the water enterprise. And item 11 is an ordinance to authorize the issuance and sale of tax-exempt or taxable water revenue bonds and other forms of indebtedness by the SFPUC in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $32.5 million to finance the costs of various capital projects benefiting the power enterprise and to authorize the issuance of refunding power revenue bonds and declaring the official intent of the Commission to reimburse itself with one or more issues of tax-exempt or taxable bonds.
Colleagues, can we take those items, same house, same call? Without objection, those ordinances passed unanimously on the first reading. Next item, please.
Item 12 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to require the installation and use of telematic vehicle tracking systems in all motor vehicles owned or leased by the city, other than vehicles used for law enforcement, and submission of an annual report by the city administrator on vehicle use based on data derived from these systems and affirming the planning department's CEQA determination.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance passes unanimously, finally passes unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 13 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to require the city to open and operate no fewer than 6 navigation centers within 24 months of the effective date of the ordinance.
Supervisor Campos.
Madam President, we're still waiting for some language technical changes that were made. I was wondering if we could come back to this item.
Okay. Supervisor Cohen, is that okay? Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call item number 14.
Item 14 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to require appraisals and appraisal review for certain city jurisdictional transfers, acquisitions, conveyances, and leases of real property, requiring that appraisals conform to the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice and be prepared by qualified appraisers, and to increase the rent limits for the Director of Property's existing authority to enter into leases for the city.
Okay, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item.
Item 15 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to revise the residential unit conversion ordinance to require hosting platforms verify that a residential unit is on the city registry prior to listing, require hosting platforms respond to notices and requests for information, to provide for civil, administrative, and criminal penalties against hosting platforms for violation of the residential unit conversion ordinance, and affirming the department's CEQA determination.
All right, colleagues, is there a motion to excuse Supervisor Farrell? Moved by Supervisor Campos, seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, Supervisor Farrell is excused. And on the item, Supervisor Campos.
Madam President, thank you. I'll just briefly say that I want to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisor Peskin, as well as Supervisors Avalos and Mark, but I want to thank the rest of the board. And I'm very proud of the fact that we're speaking with one voice on this very important issue. And I know that there are other jurisdictions that are also watching what we do. So thank you very much.
All right. With that, Madam Clerk, on the item, can you please call the roll?
On item 15, Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 10 ayes.
The ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item number 16.
Item 16 is an ordinance to amend the planning code to allow for greater flexibility in the screening and enclosure of rooftop mechanical equipment, to modify mid-block alley controls and their applicability to the South of Market Neighborhood Commercial Transit District, the Folsom Street Neighborhood Commercial Transit District, the Regional Commercial District, the C3 Downtown Commercial District, and to affirm the Planning Department's CEQA determination and make the appropriate findings.
Roll call vote.
On item 16, Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item number 17.
Item 17 is an ordinance to amend ordinance number 16-10 as amended to authorize the collection and levy of special taxes within the city and county of San Francisco, special tax district number 2009-1 for accessibility modifications and improvements to privately owned buildings or real property.
Thank you. Colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. Next item, please.
Item 18 is an ordinance to deappropriate $300,000 District 7 board projects in the general city responsibility and to appropriate $300,000 to various departments in order to support the District 7 participatory budgeting projects in fiscal years 2015 through 16.
Colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. All right, Madam Clerk, please call items 19, 20, 31, and 32 together.
Item 19 is the proposed interim budget and appropriation ordinance to appropriate all estimated receipts and all estimated expenditures for departments of the city as of May 31st, 2016, for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2017 and June 30th, 2018. Item 20 is the proposed interim annual salary ordinance, enumerating positions in the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2017 and June 30th, 2018. Item 31 is the resolution to approve the interim budget of the Treasure Island Development Authority for fiscal years 2016-17 and 17-18. And item 32 is the resolution to approve an interim budget of the Office of Community Investment and Infrastructure, operating as the successor agency to the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency for fiscal year 2016 through 17.
All right, colleagues, can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, those items pass unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call items 21 through 28.
Item 21 is a resolution to authorize the Second Amendment to the contract agreement with X-Tech JV, a technology marketplace, Tier 1A generalist contractor, and to increase the contract limits from $32 million to $56 million through September 30th, 2017. Item 22, resolution to authorize the Second Amendment to the contract agreement with Computerland of Silicon Valley, a technology marketplace, Tier 1A generalist contractor, to increase the contract limit from $32 million to $44 million through September 30th, 2017. Item 23 is a resolution to authorize the First Amendment to the contract agreement with Intervision Systems Technologies, a Tier 1B specialist contractor, to increase the contract limit from $12 million to $15 million through September 30th, 2017. Item 24, resolution to authorize the Second Amendment to the contract agreement with Endpoint Technologies, a technology marketplace Tier 1A generalist contractor, and increase the contract limit from $31 million to $50 million through September 30th, 2017. Item 25, resolution to authorize a contract agreement between the City and Cornerstone Technology Partners, a Tier 1B specialist contractor, for an amount not to exceed $12 million for an initial 3-year term with 2 options to extend for up to 1 year each. Item 26 is a resolution to authorize a contract agreement between the City and Learnit, a technology marketplace Tier 1B specialist contractor, for an amount not to exceed $12 million for a 3-year term with 2 options to extend for up to 1 year. Item 27, resolution to authorize the Office of Contract Administration to enter into a contract agreement between the City and SoftNet Solutions, a Tier 1B specialist contractor, for an amount not to exceed $12 million for a 3-year term with 2 options to extend the contract for up to 1 year each. And item 28 is a resolution to authorize the Office of Contract Administration to enter into a contract agreement between the city and United Layer, a technology marketplace Tier 1B specialist contractor, for an amount not to exceed $12 million for a 3-year contract with 2 options to extend for up to 1 year each.
Colleagues, can we take those items, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolutions are adopted unanimously. Item 29, please.
Item 29, resolution to authorize and designate city and county officials to execute and file any actions necessary for the purpose of obtaining state and federal financial assistance under various grant programs, including the Federal Fiscal Year 2016 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant, the Federal Fiscal Year 2016 Homeland Security Grant, and the 2016 Emergency Management Performance Grant, as well as the 2016 Local Government Oil Spill Contingency Plan Grant Program.
Colleague, Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. I will be voting against this initiative, this grant for UWASI. I was seeking to actually make an amendment, mostly because that part of the funds for UWASI in the region pay for militarization of police departments. In particular, in Alameda County, there have been abuses within the Alameda County law enforcement agencies that have collaborated that have led to a great deal of repression of people in Oakland and other parts of Alameda County. And I don't feel that's the right pathway that we should be taking with dollars that really should be used for emergency preparedness. And to me, the greatest way that we can seek emergency preparedness is to make sure that people on the ground in our communities have greater relationships to look after one another, and our WASI dollars do not pay for that. I think that our WASI dollars are also prey to a global context of endless war that we are in that only exacerbates the violence that we're seeing in Southwest Asia and Europe and in our streets in the United States. We cannot fight for peace by militarizing the world. We cannot fight for nuclear disarmament by increasing by $1 trillion over the next 30 years our nuclear arsenal. We cannot stop hate by militarizing our police department. And we cannot stop violence in our streets by militarizing our police departments. The answer really is how we can create better conditions for people to live better lives, and our police department being militarized with military weapons while our guns are being exploded across the nation and not being regulated effectively do not make our streets safer. So I will be voting against this initiative because it is the wrong pathway for creating preparedness in the Bay Area and in the world.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 29, Supervisor Avalos.
No.
Avalos, no. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 10 ayes and 1 no with Supervisor Avalos in the dissent.
The resolution is adopted. Item 30, please.
Item 30 is a resolution to authorize the execution and performance of an option to ground lease in connection with the parcels located at 1101 Connecticut Street and Connecticut Street and 25th Street for no cost, which expires on June 30th, 2017, with an extension option of 6 months until December 31st, 2017, between the city and Potrero Housing Associates, and to adopt the appropriate findings.
Roll call vote.
On item 30, Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The resolution is adopted unanimously. All right, Madam Clerk, let's go to item number 33.
Item 33 is a resolution to retroactively authorize the San Francisco Children and Families Commission to accept and expend an increase to the grant from the United States Department of Education through the California Department of Education for a total of approximately $2 million to support early learning quality improvement system for the period of July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2016.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 34.
Item 34 is a resolution to approve a contract for paratransit broker and operating agreement with Transdev Services to provide paratransit brokerage and transportation services in an amount not to exceed $143 million for a 5-year term with 5-year options.
Supervisor Yee.
Yes, thank you. I've been working with MTA on some of the issues with paratransit and especially the group van piece in the past, and glad to sponsor this particular item. However, I just have to say something that in light of what happened last week with the tragic death of Ms. Harris, who actually was taking a paratransit to a meeting and being hit by the same vehicle that drove her there and killed her, made me question a lot about whether or not MTA, who contracts with the with this group, Transdev, whether or not they require any type of training for these drivers, and while asking these questions, Transdev actually responded, and to my surprise, it's actually the training that they have is very extensive. I don't know, but is there a representative here at all? I want to thank you for the report, but one of the things is we just passed a piece of legislation requiring vehicles to be armed with telematics. I'm wondering whether or not these paratransit vehicles are armed with that. That's like a GPS.
Annette Williams, Manager of Accessible Services, SFMTA. The paratransit vehicles are equipped with mobile data computers, which are GPS activated, and so we do collect the same kind of information, telematic information that you're talking about.
Okay.
They also have Drive Cam, which also collects video and audible. When there are G-forces in the vehicle, it collects that, similar to what we have on the fixed route buses.
And then one last question. I'm looking into another tool that can help us with our Vision Zero, which is arming our vehicles, especially larger vehicles, with sensor detectors that would alarm a driver that they're just about to hit something. Are these vehicles armed with that?
They aren't currently, but that's something we're very willing to look into. We do own the vehicles. They're owned by SFMTA, so that's something we can look at in terms of purchasing vehicles.
Oh, good. That's something that I'm hoping to present some legislation around that in the near future. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. All right, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item 35 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to allow persons receiving tenant-based rental assistance under the Federal Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, known as HOPWA, program to be eligible for protections against rent increases.
Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Colleagues, this legislation closes a glaring loophole in our rent ordinance. Currently, for frequently long-term HIV survivors, largely low-income HIV survivors who receive federal housing subsidies under the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS program, also known as HOPWA. We recently discovered that our rent ordinance, for reasons no one can remember and no one can explain, that these recipients are not covered by rent control. Unlike Section 8 recipients and other federal subsidy recipients who do receive rent protections, HOPWA recipients, as we recently learned, have no such protection. We learned this when someone brought it to our attention, a HOPWA recipient who received a huge rent increase. We consulted with the city attorney and with the rent board, and lo and behold, this loophole existed. We went back and spoke with the apartment association, small property owners, and others, and no one could remember why this was in there or if it was just a drafting error. But regardless, it needs to be corrected. And so we worked closely with the AIDS Legal Referral Panel, as well as the Apartment Association and other both tenant groups and landlord groups, and everyone agrees that this loophole should be closed, and this legislation will close the loophole and provide full rent control protections to our HOPWA recipients. For so many people living with HIV in this city, and particularly long-term survivors, disproportionately people who are aging, either are seniors or close to becoming seniors, these residents of our city have been to hell and back. They have suffered with their health for many years. They have lost so many people in their lives to this epidemic. These are people who disproportionately are struggling with housing, and people who, if they lose their rent-controlled housing, they're really going to struggle to remain in the city. They could have to leave the city. They could become homeless. And that's the last thing we need to happen. We need to support our residents who are living with HIV. They deserve rent control just like others deserve rent control. They deserve housing stability, and this legislation will allow us to provide them with the stability that they need. I want to thank President Breed and Supervisor Campos and Supervisor Cohen for signing on as co-sponsors, and colleagues, I ask for your support. And I want to thank Jeff Cretin in my office for his work on this legislation.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner, and I'm also a co-sponsor in this legislation.
I said that.
Thank you. Supervisor Yee.
Yeah, thank you, co-sponsor President Bree. I just, real quickly, I want to thank Supervisor Weiner for actually catching this loophole and closing this loophole, and I'm hoping that I could add my name as a co-sponsor.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Campos.
And I'm happy to join President Breed in her co-sponsorship as well. This is one of those populations that has a really tough time as it is, and I do want to thank Supervisor Weiner for closing this loophole. It's a long time coming, so I'm proud to be a supporter.
Thank you. And with that, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. All right, Madam Clerk. Let's skip over our 3 p.m. special order, and we can go to roll call for introductions.
And before we do that, Madam President, I'll just say for the viewers in the audience and those watching at home that items 44 and 45 were not forwarded to the board as committee reports, so they are not in front of this body today.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Roll call for introductions, Madam President. Supervisor Avalos is first.
Submit.
President Breed?
Can you re-refer, please?
Yes. Supervisor Campos?
Can you re-refer?
Supervisor Cohen? Supervisor Farrell?
Thank you, colleagues. Just one quick in memoriam today for Mitzi Campbell. Mitzi Campbell was the construction worker who was killed last Friday while working in the Soma area. She was a 2013 of our City Build program and a proud member of Labor's Local 261. She was surrounded by family at the end here and will be missed by all of us. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Kim? Re-refer? Okay. Supervisor Marr?
We refer after Supervisor Campos. Okay.
He's ready. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you.
Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple of items today, and the first item is an in memoriam for a dear friend, resident of District 9 of Bernal Heights, and that is an in memoriam for the incredible woman, Carla Johnson. I'd like to honor the life of Carla Johnson, who so many of you, probably all of you here, have worked with. Perhaps a a devoted advocate for disability rights in the city and county of San Francisco, a dedicated city employee for 27 years, as I noted, a resident of Bernal Heights in District 9, and an overall just beautiful human being. As leader of the Mayor's Office on Disability and the overall coordinator of the city's Americans with Disabilities Act, Carla worked tirelessly to advocate for disability rights in all major San Francisco initiatives. By working closely with community-based groups, disability advocates, and advocating for training programs for ADA coordinators and city contractors, Carla promoted complete access to our city government for all San Franciscans. Our office worked very closely with Carla on a number of issues relating to both disability rights and LGBT rights, and oftentimes the two intersected. She was a champion and a critical part of allowing us to open the great and groundbreaking Jassie's Place, the nation's first adult LGBT center for the homeless, helping us by guiding us through all the ADA changes that needed to happen so that this shelter could be open. She really went above and beyond what was required to make sure that we had all the information, all the guidance we needed. She was also a very close partner in our legislation to mandate all single-stall restrooms in San Francisco, that those restrooms be all-gender restrooms. She approached this legislation not only as a leader in the disability rights movement, but also as a member of the LGBTQ community. She shared her own stories about being harassed as she was trying to use restrooms due to her gender expression. It was largely because of her work and vision that this legislation, as of today, is the strongest and most thoughtful legislation on inclusive bathrooms in this country. And how timely that we can proudly say that, even as others in this country try to attack the right of members of the LGBT community to access restrooms. Carla Johnson was truly a remarkable woman. She was passionate, she was intelligent, and my God, she had a big heart. Besides the work that we did here through city government, I often ran into Carla on Bernal Hill as I took Winston, my English bulldog, to play. She had her dog. And there's something happening, I guess, in this country lately in terms of the loss of remarkable people. I can't imagine a kinder, nicer, gentler human being than Carla Johnson. I feel blessed that I had the privilege and the honor to get to know her, to work with her. I know that she left the world a better place because of the work she did, but beyond that, because of the love and dignity that she showed every single human being. Before I move on to my next item, I know that there are a number of, maybe a couple of colleagues who want to say a few words about Carla Johnson, and so I'd like to let them do that. I know that Supervisor Kim wanted to say a few words as well, and I know that there are others.
Okay, Supervisor Kim, and if anyone else wants to speak, please put your name on the
I'm sorry, Supervisor
dais.
Cohen.
Well, actually,
Supervisor Kim.
Oh? Yeah.
Supervisor Kim.
thank you. I just want to recognize Anna Cooperberg, who wrote this in memoriam today on behalf of her partner and asked that we read this. Carla Jean Johnson, admired by everyone for her integrity, grace, strength, modesty, dedication, and striking good looks, passed away in her own bed on Sunday morning in the arms of her partner of 17 years, Anna Cooperberg. In her tireless work for the city as a carpenter at Public Works, then building inspector at DBI, then deputy director of Department of Building Inspection, and finally the director of the Mayor's Office on Disability, Carla has personally built, inspected, developed, and influenced so much of San Francisco. Her presence is felt all over the city, literally, actually in our sidewalks. Among her many achievements at the various levels of government, I will just mention a few. Carla was instrumental in helping to craft the nation's first legislation mandating that all places of public accommodation be accessible. She had an unyielding passion to include accessibility performance standards in the procurement of digital communication and software application. Carla worked tirelessly with numbers of community-based groups and disability advocates to promote the idea that full disability access in San Francisco includes not only buildings, but also programs, services, and entry into meaningful city government employment. Carla set standards to ensure that public events and celebrations were fully accessible. Carla established disability performance standards and pedestrian safety in our homeless shelters and quality installation of grab bars and single-room occupancy hotels, many of which are in the district that I represent. Carla implemented disability access in the review and design of ADA accessible play equipment and playgrounds. There are literally 2 pages of accomplishments that could be reviewed and written about Carla's career achievements. Her partner, Anna, said that one of her favorite jobs for the city was volunteering to officiate for same-sex weddings in City Hall in 2008. Carla was all about love. It is always a tragedy when someone passes at the age of 56, but Carla did twice as much in her life as most people do. It's as if she lived to be 112. She had no regrets, and most of all, she appreciated the lovely and dedicated people she got to meet and collaborate with. On behalf of her partner, Anna, I want to say that she wanted to let you all know that she is grateful that she got to wear so many hats for the city, and her favorite one was the hard hat. She wanted to be remembered first and foremost as a carpenter who is following her passion for restoring the beauty of old Victorians. Carla Johnson will be cremated wearing jeans, a white t-shirt, and cowboy boots. And her memorial will be held in the Bayview Opera House in a date to be determined. I wanted to add my own words to her partner's words, and again, thank Carla so much, not just for her leadership, but also her grace and compassion. I learned so much from Carla on issues that I think so many of us take for granted on a daily basis, whether it is on the sidewalk curb ramps, to our shelters, where so many of our residents who are homeless are homeless in many ways because of multiple barriers to employment, often due to physical disabilities and other disabilities. Carla was also, as I had said several weeks before, took on a very difficult role as a department head lead, but someone who decided that her voice and her advocacy was the most important thing every day and not protecting her job. And that is something that is so difficult and challenging to do. And I just want to really respect and remember Carla for, most of all, her heart. She really, truly cared about so many members of our community and city. And it is with immense love and heartfulness that I wish her and her family our condolences. And Carla, rest in power.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It just seems so unreal to be talking about Carla Johnson in the past tense. I known Carla for many years, but in the last few years I had the wonderful privilege to work closer with her on the rebuild of the Bayview Opera House. Carla was a true advocate for the disability community, and I know everyone that worked with her, enjoyed working with her, and collaborating with her. She was a strong believer that all of our new buildings and projects should be accessible to everyone, which has made such an incredible impact on our city and in our residents' lives. As you know, we will be holding a service for Carla in July, which she wanted it to be used for a fundraiser to help close the gap for the Bayview Opera House. And when I heard this news, I was so touched, so touched. And it just reminded me that Carla was truly a public servant all the way up until the end. She was thinking about others above herself. So Carla will truly be missed, and I join all of you in closing today's meeting in her memory that will truly live on. I'm grateful that we all had an opportunity I think about a month ago, to recognize and present an award to her when she was still with us, and she had an opportunity to hear our thoughts and our experiences that we have shared in working with Carla. I want to thank Anna. Is she here?
No.
In the chamber? Not today?
But she's watching on SFG
She's
TV.
watching. I just want to take a moment, and I want to thank Anna for sharing such a treasure. Carla will be loved, and she will truly live on in not only in our hearts, but also in the buildings, in the streets, and in the sidewalks, and in the bathrooms of this great city that she loved. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you. I'll try not to be redundant to what my colleagues have said, but from what Supervisor Campos and Kim just revealed about Carla, I'm picturing her in the hard hat and cowboy boots, walking her dog along with Supervisor Campos and Winston in Bernal Heights, a really amazing neighborhood. I visited there this weekend and just feel that it represents in many ways how warm and what a great community people should live in. And I know that San Francisco and Bernal Heights are a better place. The world is a better place because of Carla's short time on this earth. I know she was only 56, I believe, as she's passed. I wanted to say, like Supervisor Kim, I learned tremendous amount from her. She gave me new eyes to see and feel the world with, and to do my part to help to empower people. As we worked on the 25th anniversary of the ADA, she helped me understand how law and policy is created not disconnected from social movements of people that sometimes take direct action, building takeovers like the federal building takeovers and others to achieve policies and laws that improve the lives of people that follow them. She also taught me about dignity of people with disabilities as we are fighting for equal rights for disabled people to gain city government employment, to remove barriers, and to treat people with dignity as they advocate for jobs and economic livelihood of themselves. I'll just end by just saying that I miss her very much, and condolences to Anna and her family and all the friends and loved ones that she touched in the world like me.
Thank you, everyone. And with that, colleagues, clearly we have lost a true champion, someone who's done an amazing job for the city and county of San Francisco and gave so much of herself to so many amazing projects, including the place where I served as the African American Art and Culture Complex Executive Director. She was really an amazing person, great to work with, and had a heart of gold, and she will be missed. And colleagues, without objection, I'd like to adjourn the board meeting on behalf of every member of the Board of Supervisors. Thank you, without objection. With that, I want to turn it back over to Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I have a couple more items, and they all relate to the tragedy that happened over the weekend in Orlando. And I'd like to first note that we are asking, at the request of a number of members of the Latino LGBTQ community, who have asked that we remember the victims in some fashion, asking the city attorney to help us draft a resolution, and look forward to working with Supervisor Wiener or anyone who is interested in this to create a plaque here in San Francisco to remember the 49 victims who lost their lives in that massacre. We have been approached by Aguilas, which is an LGBTQ Latino organization that wants to play a lead role in making that happen, and I look forward to working to make that happen. I also want to note that in response to this tragedy, I know that we have gotten a lot of questions from members not only of the LGBTQ community, but of the entire San Francisco community about safety, and as we approach LGBT Pride. And I know that I'm working with Supervisor Weiner, with our new chief, who I just met with this morning, to talk about that. And I want to just, as a piece of information, and this is something that the interim chief recently stated, is that this is a time for us to be vigilant. And I just want to give the number of the anonymous tip hotline for the city and county of San Francisco, which is 415-575-4444. If you see anything, please call and report it. I want to thank the mayor for starting our meeting with a moment of silence for the victims. And in that spirit, I want to say that it has been a very difficult few days for me, not only as a gay man, but also as a Latino man, to see the tragedy that took place. And then as a gay Latino man, to see the names and the pictures of the people who perished, so many of them members of my community. And I want to thank my colleagues for all your words, your condolences, and then for coming together in the Castro. And I want to thank Supervisor Weiner for working to make that happen. I thought it was a very beautiful thing to see the city and county of San Francisco coming together, being united, hearing from the mayor, hearing from other elected officials, and hearing from members of the community who were impacted. And the one thing that I was really struck by was how everyone that I have spoken to about this crisis and this, with guns and hatred, keeps going back to how we're not going to let people use this tragedy to divide us, and especially to scapegoat the Muslim community. So colleagues, I would simply ask that just like we close in the memory as an entire board of the great Carla Johnson, that we also adjourn our meeting today in the memory of all of the victims that perished in this tragic massacre. And with that, I would ask that you join me in that you each have a list of the names of victims, the 49 victims that we've divided among the 11 supervisors, and I would simply ask that we read those names so that the names of these individuals are read and that people hear them here in the city and county of San Francisco. And we thought we would do it by district order, 1 through 11. So with that, I would ask Supervisor Marr to begin the process. Thank you.
Akira Monet Murray, 18. Alejandro Barrios Martinez, 21. Amanda Alviar and Mercedes Marisol Flores, 25 and 26. Jean C. Neves Rodriguez, 27 years old.
Anthony Luis Laureano Disla, 25. Antonio Devon Brown, 29. Brenda Lee Marquez McCool, 49. Christopher Joseph Sanfeliz, 24.
Daryl D.J. Roman Burt II, 29. Dianca Deirdre Drayton, 32. Eddie Hamoldroy Justice, 30. Edward Sotomayor Jr., 34.
Frank Hernandez, 27. Frankie Jimmy De Jesus Velasquez, 50. Geraldo A. Drake Ortiz Jimenez, 25. Gilberto Ramon Silva Menendez, 25.
Jean Carlos Mendez Perez, 35. Gerald Arthur Wright, 31. Joe Rayon Peñigua, 32. Jonathan Antonio Camus Vega, 24.
Juan Chavez Martinez, 25. Juan Pablo Rivera Velasquez, 37.
Juan Ramon Guerrero, and Christopher Andrew Lenonen, 22, 32. Kimberly Morris, 37.
Luis Daniel Wilson Leon, 37. Luis Amar Ocasio Capo, 20. Luis S. Vierma, 22. Martin Benitez Torres, 33. Miguel Angel Honorado, 30.
Oscar Aracena Montero and Simon Adrian Carrillo Fernandez, 26 and 31. Paul Terrell Henry, 41. Peter O. Gonzalez Cruz, age 22. Rodolfo Ayala, age 33.
Shane Tomlinson, 33. Stanley Almodovar III, 23. Tevin Eugene Crosby, 25. Javier Emmanuel Serrano Rosado, 35. Yulmarie Rodriguez Sullivan, 24.
Eric Ivan Ortiz Rivera, 36. Jason Benjamin Josephat, 19. Luis Daniel Condi, 39. Leroy Valentin Fernandez, 25.
Angel El Candelario Padro, 28. Corey James Connell, 21. Enrique El Rios Jr., 25. Javier Jorge Reyes, 40.
Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, colleagues, and the rest I submit. May they rest in peace.
And colleagues, without objection, can we adjourn the entire meeting on behalf of the individuals whose name we have read into record on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, without objection?
Madam President, we'll continue with roll call for introductions.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Marr.
Submit.
Okay. Supervisor Peskin.
Colleagues, I want to echo the resounding sorrow and heartache that everyone is feeling with respect to the mass homicide in Orlando, and on top of that, the loss of our dear friend Carla Johnson, who I had the pleasure of working with for many, many years. It's been a tough week already, and to add to that, I'd like to offer two in memoriams today, one for the beloved North Beach figure Giovanni Jota, commonly known to everybody as Papa Johnny, as well as for Mike Pops Shawa. Papa Johnny immigrated to America as a refugee from World War II. He came to this country with hardly anything and achieved the American dream with determination and hard work and coffee. He opened the Cafe Trieste in San Francisco's North Beach 60 years ago on April the 1st, 1956, before anybody on the West Coast knew what espresso was. He immigrated 6 years earlier from a small fishing village in a part of Italy that is now in Croatia. Missing the espresso houses of Trieste, Italy, Papa Johnny opened his own cafe. The cafe has served as a comfortable respite for neighbors, for actors such as Michael Douglas, as a movie set for many feature films and television shows, including one starring Demi Moore. All of this made Papa Johnny very happy. The cafe has been the subject of many articles, news stories, and documentaries around the globe, and the walls are adorned with pictures of famous celebrities who have visited the cafe, as well as the hundreds of musical events in which the various members of the Jota family have long participated. In 1971, Papa Johnny established the Cafe Trieste Saturday Concert, and it is the longest-running musical show in San Francisco. All 5 members of the Jota family, Papa Johnny, Mama Ida, his deceased son Gianfranco, His daughter Sonia and son Fabio have been performing on stage, radio, television, and films since 1953 and have performed with celebrities such as Luciano Pavarotti. Papa Johnny's old world techniques proved essential in securing this reputation, as well as the distinction of being called the espresso pioneer of the West Coast. If asked how he does it, he says, "No big deal. Buy the best beans, roast them yourself, and brew each cup like it's for you." Naturally, anything great cannot stay confined for very long, and demand from other coffee houses and restaurants, as well as from patrons of the cafe, soon made it necessary to open a retail wholesale outlet and a second coffee house, and then a third. Papa Johnny has much to be proud of. His two children, Fabio and Sonia, are helping maintain the tradition of fine coffee making together with his granddaughter, Ida Zabi. The right blend of love and tradition has resulted in a standard of quality previously unattained. Thank you, Papa Johnny, for everything you've done for the neighborhood. May you rest in peace. And for those of you who know the iconic Sam's Burger on Broadway in North Beach, Mike Shawa passed away a few days ago. Mike was a Palestinian immigrant who arrived in North Beach in San Francisco, and in 1970 took over his uncle's burger joint, which had opened in 1966, 50 years ago. Named Sam's Burger, it was the first fast food joint in the neighborhood, and it has not changed a bit since it opened. The place is small with limited seating at the counter and just a few tables and chairs against the wall. Unless you're a local and know how good the burger is, it can easily be missed as you walk along Broadway. Mike devoted his life to the North Beach neighborhood. During an interview with SF Foodies in 2013, Mike said that grilling burgers at Sam's was his first job and was going to be his last. There were tough times when, even though the neighborhood loved Sam's, Carl's Jr. opened up less than a block away on Broadway in the late 1990s, but Mike not only stayed competitive, his popularity increased, and finally Carl's Jr. closed down. He was a fixture in North Beach. We will all miss him, and my condolences to his family. The rest I will submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. And with Supervisor Wiener's deference, Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much, friends and colleagues. It's been an incredible last 36 hours with just so much grief and an opportunity for us to reflect on really what's most important in life. So I hope that you will draw your loved ones near and close. And sometimes it seems like the debates that we have in this chamber seem inconsequential and just small when you think about the great leaders that we have acknowledged that have passed on. And also those that we don't know, for the names that we read off today. Supervisor Campos, thank you. Thank you very much, Supervisor Campos, for bringing that to us. I think it's important that remember in this moment of grief and sorrow that we dig down deep and we find our inner strength to fight for justice and for things that are good and righteous in this world. So today I'm introducing a resolution urging the State Assembly to adopt a series of gun safety bills. It's a package of 5. AB 1664, which is authored by Assemblyman Levine and Assemblyman Ting, removes loopholes in assault weapon ban that allow for, quote, bullet buttons to easily facilitate changing magazines. Assembly Bill 1673, authored by Assemblyman Gibson, closes the loophole allowing for sales of, quote, ghost guns or gun parts and components that can be easily reassembled. Assembly Bill 1674 by Assemblyman Santiago limits purchase of long guns to 1 per month, aligning the resolution for handgun purchases. Assembly Bill 1695 by our own Rob Bonta in the East Bay. His measure stops illegal, quote, straw, end quote, purchases, which is actually someone who legally buys a gun and then resells it to someone that is unable to legally purchase a firearm. And then finally, Assembly Bill 2607, authored by our own Assemblyman Phil Ting, allows mental health professionals, employers, or co-workers to seek retraining orders to prevent high-risk individuals from obtaining firearms. In the last decade, over 100,000 people have been killed as a result of gun violence, and each year, over 300 people are killed or injured as a result of gun violence. San Francisco, we should be proud. We've got a long-standing, strong position against the proliferation of and the access to deadly firearms, and as well as ammunition. The resolution today simply puts us, this body, the Board of Supervisors, on record, once again, as taking a strong stance. Given the most recent tragedy in Orlando, Florida, and the thousands that die in counties across California with much less stronger gun control laws on the books than our own, I feel that we must continue to set the strongest example possible to stand up against the NRA and the proliferation of high-capacity firearms and ammunition. So, colleagues, I do hope that you will join me in supporting this urging resolution unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First, I want to thank Supervisor Campos and his office for putting together that very moving recitation of the names of these survivors. I did see an article that two of these gentlemen who were murdered in cold blood on Sunday, Juan Ramon Guerrero and Christopher Andrew Lenonen, were engaged to be married, and they're now going to be buried together. This is just a tragedy beyond comprehension to have this many people murdered in one fell swoop, to have so many people who are still fighting for their lives, to have so many family members and friends who are impacted. And I know that for me, this was when I first heard about this and then started seeing the details, it was very personal. I know it is for many of us. And it was just a blow that's hard to even describe. And unfortunately, as extreme as this incident is, it's the most extreme version of something that happens every day in this country, in this world, with LGBT people being victimized, bullied, harassed, beaten, raped, murdered, and it just keeps happening, and it just has to stop. And I'm just really sick of knowing people who are attacked in my district, in other parts of the country, people who are scared to walk in their own neighborhood, and the fact that even in 2016 San Francisco we have LGBT people being attacked and killed. It just speaks volumes about how much work we have left to do to make this world safe for our LGBT community. The vigil that we put together on 12 hours notice on Sunday, and I want to thank Supervisor Campos for working collaboratively with me and with the Harvey Milk LGBT Democratic Club, with Alice B. Toklas, with our Latino community, with many other community leaders to put that vigil together, was absolutely moving. That on such short notice, thousands and thousands of people gathered to remember and to recommit to move forward. It was truly, truly inspiring. And the thing with the LGBT community is this community is unbelievably resilient. This is the community that was on the brink of destruction in the HIV epidemic and managed to save itself when we had political leadership nationally that wouldn't even utter the name HIV. This is a community that in the Castro in 2006 when gay men were being raped on our streets, violently, brutally raped. We pulled together as a community and we stopped those rapes from happening. This is a community that when trans women of color have been just murdered at an unbelievable rate in this country and in this city, that this community has pulled together to say no more, and we will do that again. And we are angry, and we should be angry, but there is also hope because this community is strong, and I know we'll pull through this. So again, thank you to everyone who made Sunday a reality. I also am introducing a resolution today because we were reminded again after Sunday of the continuing outrageous discrimination against the LGBT community that continues to be tolerated and blessed by the government in this country, and that is the continuing discriminatory and non-science-based ban on gay and bisexual men donating blood. It used to be it was a lifetime ban. A year or so ago, after a lot of advocacy, the FDA turned that terrible policy into a somewhat less terrible policy by saying that if you're a gay or bisexual man, you can donate blood if you're willing to abstain from sex for a year. Of course, that is tantamount to a ban. And so adding insult to injury, after the massacre in Orlando and all the people in the hospital and the gay and bisexual men who wanted to donate blood to help their brothers and sisters survive, guess what? They couldn't do it. It is just beyond outrageous that the Food and Drug Administration continues to classify LGBT people as second-class citizens. Gay and bisexual men are not the only people who are at risk for HIV, and we have testing technology that can test for the virus in blood with a 2-week window, and yet the FDA continues to effectively exclude all gay and bisexual men from donating blood. So I'm introducing a resolution today with the co-sponsorship of Supervisor Campos to, again, call on the FDA to actually base its policies on science and not on discrimination. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First of all, I just want to thank all my colleagues for actually voting to affirm my legislation around the black box. That would actually give a tool, another tool to make sure that we move towards the goals of our Vision Zero policy in San Francisco. Since we passed that, I felt like we needed to do more and arm ourselves with even more tools that can get us to those goals. So I recently have requested from the city's attorney to draft legislation around requiring that in our vehicles and beyond the city's vehicles to what I call the blind spot legislation that would actually require that our vehicles, the large vehicles in particularly, be armed with motion detectors, sensors, so that if they can't see somebody that's in front of them, that the motion sensor will indicate to the driver that there is somebody in front of them and they shouldn't run them over. In recent years, we've seen quite a few instances where this has happened, and each time the excuse has been, I didn't see the person in front of. Well, this technology has been around for forever, and it's time for us to spend a little money to save people's lives. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. And now to the re-referral list, President Breed.
Supervisor Avalos, I see your name on the roster. Did you want to make any comments?
Yes, I would please. Before I actually had submitted, but I did want to make some comments, and there's actually some news that just came to me right now that I wanted to acknowledge as well. So I first of all, I want to thank Supervisor Campos for bringing forward the list of people who lost their lives at the Pulse Club in Orlando, and I can't help but just realize just how devastating this is, targeting also not just members of the queer community, but members of the Latinx community as well. And that's something that I think is just equally devastating in all of this news. I don't really have any other word to say about it. My mind and heart go numb when I think about just how horrible this is, and it sets us up for belief that this could happen again, which frightens me even more. The news that I wanted to share with there's two people who I worked closely with in the community who just died in the past few days. Joe Lambert, who had run Creative Music on Ocean Avenue. I honored Joe back in 2010 for a Small Business History Month, or Small Business Month, and he and his wife Elba, and he was a really great connoisseur of music and someone who I really enjoyed talking with about jazz and a little bit about hip hop, mostly jazz, and just a great person, and he just passed away. And then even more shocking was hearing that Mike Brown of Inner City Youth just passed away over the weekend on Sunday as well. And Mike and I go back to about 97 when I was an intern at Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth, and was here at City Hall when it was across the street when this building was being renovated, and I saw a bunch of young people in green jackets with Inner City Youth in the back of them, and I met Mike Brown and just saw what incredible work he was doing in a community that is all too often neglected in San Francisco. Working class, African American youth, shut out from a lot of access to jobs and attention from the city and city services, and Mike Brown worked with several generations of young people over the years and helped many young people avoid death on the streets, avoid life, not getting access to employment or education, and he helped so many people have access to those things that are so essential to life and living. And next week I will come forward with an in memoriam for both of them. I just heard right now, and I know Supervisor Cohen as well has relationships with them as well, and probably has comments to say either today or next week. But this is pretty devastating on top of everything that we've heard over the weekend.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you. I just wanted to add something to what Supervisor Avalos said, which is the impact that the horrible incident massacre in Orlando has had on the LGBTQ Latino community. And one of the reasons we wanted to have those names read is not only to remember each individual, but also you can see collectively the disproportionate impact of all the Latino surname victims, and that's why it's so tragic and so painful for this community. And one of the points that we have tried to make, and members of our community have continued to point out, is simply to make sure that the Latino piece is not forgotten, and that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no other names on the roster.
Madam President, there was a referral list of individuals who requested to be re-referred, you being number one, Supervisor Cohen, Farrell, and Kim.
Okay. So I am going to introduce an item today. Colleagues, before I introduce the item, I do want to say thank you to Supervisor Campos and Supervisor Wiener for leading a prayer vigil in the Castro after the Orlando shooting, and thank you so much for your leadership on adjourning this meeting in their honor. It has been a lot of tragedy. We have lost, sadly, a lot of incredible people, even in San Francisco, and our thoughts and prayers are definitely with the families of the victims, with the family of Mike Brown, with the family of Carla Johnson, and I do appreciate working with some dedicated and compassionate individuals here on the board who recognize that it's not just always about policy. We also need to take time and just put things into perspective because life is short, and embrace your family, your friends, and show some love and compassion to one another every now and then. It makes the world a better place. And with that, colleagues, I have one item to introduce, and that is legislation reforming the city's whistleblower protection ordinance. It's to strengthen that law and provide meaningful safeguards for city employees and contractors who help bring improper activities to light. Workers should never have to fear retaliation because they had the courage to report wrongdoing. They should never fear losing their job and never have to risk their own position because someone else is misusing theirs. This legislation, inspired by our civil grand jury and developed by the Ethics Commission, will further protect whistleblowers, and in doing so, protect taxpayer dollars and the collective confidence of our city government. When there has been improper activity by a city employee failing to perform their duties and creating a danger to public health or safety, by gross waste, fraud, or abuse of city resources, or when the city's conflict of interest, ethics, lobbying, or campaign laws have been violated, these activities need to come to light. And the person reporting them should not suffer retaliation for doing so. Our laws should encourage people to report such abuse and protect them while they do. Unfortunately, in its 2015 report, San Francisco's whistleblower protection ordinance is in need of change. The civil grand jury found just the opposite, that existing city law is failing to provide adequate protection for whistleblowers. The Ethics Commission carefully reviewed that report and unanimously adopted a series of recommendations to improve the whistleblower law. I was proud to work with our new Ethics Commission Executive Director, Leanne Pelham, to turn those recommendations into legislation and bring them to the Board of Supervisors today. Our legislation will strengthen the law by, number one, expanding the types of complaints that can constitute improper governmental activities to also include gross waste, fraud, and abuse of city resources. Number two, it'll expand protections to include city contractors and those who file a complaint at any city, county, state, or federal agency, not just a department at which they work. Often employees are reluctant to speak up within their own department, but may say something to another agency. They deserve equal protection. Number three, this legislation increases penalties from a maximum of $5,000 to a maximum of $10,000 against those who are found to have retaliated against a whistleblower. Number four, it authorizes the Ethics Commission to call for the reversal of a retaliatory action against a whistleblower. And it's important to point out that the Commission has also already adopted companion regulations that clarify what kinds of regulatory actions are covered under the ordinance protections. It includes negative actions regarding an appointment, promotion, transfer, reassignment, performance evaluation, suspension, termination, or other disciplinary action. To reinforce confidentiality protections, the legislation creates new sanctions for knowing disclosure of a whistleblower's identity. And lastly, it strengthens accountability for investigations into alleged whistleblower retaliation by adding new reporting requirements for departments when the Ethics Commission refers a matter to them for investigation, and clarifying the legal standard used to assess evidence and at what stage that standard applies. These changes, in concert with the extensive regulations the Commission has already adopted, will vastly improve the city's whistleblower protections and investigations and foster a fairer, more responsive government. The civil grand jury first raised these issues, the Ethics Commission responded, and now we have the opportunity to make them law. With the Commission's recommendation in hand, we have an important opportunity to fix what's been broken in the city for far too long. I want to thank the civil grand jury members who worked so hard, volunteering their time to make the city better and to hold the city accountable. Thank you to the Ethics Commission, and to the Director, Leanne Pilham, and to our Deputy City Attorney, Andrew Shin, and to my Chief of Staff, Connor Johnston. I'm proud to be introducing this ordinance today, and I ask you to join me in supporting it. Thank you very much, and the rest I submit.
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Kim.
I was waiting word to announce an event this weekend, but before I get confirmation of that, I just wanted to add my words to our in memoriam today on behalf of the 50 men and women who died in Orlando on Saturday night. I want to thank Supervisor David Campos for introducing this on behalf of the board. It was the first time I had seen all 50 names, and it was incredibly moving. When we talk about numbers, I think you can gloss over what this means, but seeing each name reminds you of the family and friends that each human being on this list had. And my heart and my prayer goes out to this entire community in Orlando. And I know that this community extends farther than that. Even in my office, one of my staff members' wife went to college with one of the women who was a bouncer at the club and was one of the first to be killed in this tragic shooting. And I think one other thing that I would just say, I think that's something that struck me so much about this incident is that we don't often think of nightclubs as any type of sacred space, but so many escape to these nightlife venues as a place to be free. And when we talk about the freedom to love, that it is in clubs that you can create spaces to have the freedom to flirt with whoever you want to flirt with, to dance with whoever you want to dance with, and to love who you want to love, and that it is actually in these very spaces that that people really get to express this freedom to love. And knowing so many of those in the nightlife business that organize and DJ here in San Francisco, creating specific community spaces for people to be who they want to be. I think just with an even heavier heart, I acknowledge the terror, but also the incredible violation that so many must feel to have someone to enter a space like that where people feel that they are really building these safe communities and safe spaces. So I do want to thank Supervisor Campos and Wiener for putting this in memoriam forward, and also to acknowledge, as Supervisor Campos did, that beyond the LGBT community, even in the straight Latina community, I've heard so much sorrow and heavy hearts, and I know that the Latina community is planning a vigil this weekend, this Saturday, at a location to be announced, and would ask that we attend in solidarity. There's so many things that are being said in this country today against our Latino community, against immigrants, and I think it's hard to really untie what has happened this weekend and the cross-section of fear that is taking place here in this country. And it is even more important that we as elected leaders stand together against this type of hate and against espousing this type of fear. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Madam President, there are no other names on the roster. That concludes the introduction of new business.
Thank you. And now it is my understanding that we're ready for item number 14. And Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for coming back to me. And I have some copies of the revised ordinance as well as revised legislative digest that I'd like to ask the clerk of the board staff to please help distribute. So as you will be seeing, there is a number of changes that are being made, and I just want to begin by thanking Jeff Kositsky, who will be heading the new department on homelessness, and the changes that I'm circulating, and I will ask Jeff shortly to say a few words, and he can speak about those if he wants to. But essentially, those are changes that we're incorporating at his suggestion, and they're being made in the spirit of making sure that he has, as he takes over this new role, the flexibility that he needs to be as successful and effective as possible. Colleagues, I want to begin by thanking folks who have worked on this with me, and I want to thank specifically Supervisors Avalos and Marr for their co-sponsorship. The legislation that's before you is aimed at addressing the very pressing issue of street encampments in San Francisco, and to do so in a humane, effective way. Homeless people in San Francisco are suffering, and the residents, item 13, not 14. Homeless people in San Francisco are suffering, and the residents of the city and county of San Francisco are suffering. And especially in a place like District 9, you see our neighborhoods bearing an undue share of the brunt. Because as you have seen, encampments have become commonplace in many of these neighborhoods, whether it's Division Street, whether it's Bernal Heights. What this legislation does is requires the city to build navigation centers using proven, effective, and humane methods to specifically address the proliferation of street encampments. This is a critical step in addressing one key part of the homeless crisis, and actually complements other efforts in the form of shelters and drop-in centers. We define navigation centers in the legislation based on what we saw work in our district: temporary, low barrier to entry shelters through case management and social service programs. We know that this helps moving homeless people off the streets, out of encampments, and into housing. Our transitional housing that eventually leads to permanent housing. These centers offer comprehensive health, mental health, and other services to homeless people, including case management, social service programs, and the integration of other relevant city services. They are low barrier and allow people to enter with their partners, with their pets, and belongings. Again, I'm happy to report that since this legislation came before the board, we have been working with the Director of Homelessness, Jeff Kositsky, to again ensure that this legislation can accomplish our shared goals, which is to address the issue of growing encampments in a humane and effective way while supporting the city's overall strategy to end homelessness. Again, I have circulated the amendments, and let me just note some of the highlights that this legislation does. One, adds capacity to our shelter system by creating 6 new navigation centers in San Francisco over the next 2 years. Some of these will be brand new sites. Some will be shelters that are reconfigured to become navigation centers. And one of these sites will be specifically focused on homeless youth. Second, by allowing for the conversion of shelters into navigation centers, we are beginning the important work of bringing our shelters into the 21st century. And I want to thank President Breed and others who have actually given important suggestions on this very point. The goal here is to ensure that we have a system that is low barrier and that we are providing through that system the resources, benefits, and support that people need to be successful. Third, we are creating planning processes that will help determine how people enter the navigation centers and how people exit those navigation centers, and that will also ensure that we are focused on the goal of identifying long-term housing for people who are homeless. Housing, at the end of the day, is the key. Again, I want to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisor Avalos and Marr. A huge thank you to the homeless providers who have met with us throughout this process, and I especially want to thank the folks who are involved with HESPA, who help provide insightful and helpful analysis on how we can make the navigation center system better and how we can use this opportunity to improve the shelter system so that there is no taking away of resources from that system. I especially want to thank Jennifer Friedenbach, Jockey Jenks, Laura Guzman. Also, thanks to Amy Farrell-Weiss from the St. Francis Challenge, who has also been helpful throughout this process, and Laura Thomas. Again, I want to thank all the people that have worked over the years to make the navigation system, navigation center successful, including our former colleague, Bevan Duffy, the current head of the Office of Hope, Sam Dodge. I see Julie Ledbetter in the audience, and I want to thank Episcopal Community Services. And again, a big thank you finally, and I'd like to ask him if he can say a few words to Jeff Kositsky for his invaluable input. And I want to thank Mayor Lee for the work he is doing. We look forward to working collectively as we move forward, and I know that, like the rest of you, I am committed to making sure that Jeff is as successful as he can be in his new role, and I know that we as a board want to work with the mayor to make sure that we eradicate this problem. So with that, if I may, through the chair, I'd like to ask Jeff to say a few words.
Supervisor Campos, just for clarity, would you like to move to approve the amendments to your legislation?
Sure. Thank you, President Breed. So I hereby make a motion to amend the legislation along the lines of the document that has been given to all my colleagues.
Okay, and so it's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Farrell. So before we approve the amendments, I'll give you colleagues time to review them while we turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you very much, Supervisors. And Supervisor Campos, thank you very much for giving me a few weeks to have a chance to read the legislation. Greatly appreciated that opportunity, and what I found is that it really matches up quite well with the direction for the department that has been set by Mayor Lee. I think it is an acknowledgement of the success of the first navigation center, and as well as the people of San Francisco's frustration with the growing street population and the need to address it through proven activities like navigation centers. I'd like to also state that the spirit of the legislation that was originally submitted by Supervisor Campos has not changed at all. The only changes were, in my mind, primarily administrative, allowing us the flexibility to fit this in with our current planning process for the new department, as well as to match up with the budget that has been presented by the mayor, and to have a little bit of flexibility as we work to open up 6 new navigation centers in the next 2 years. I appreciate everyone on the Board of Supervisors who helped participate in this process, and think it is a great example of the spirit of cooperation and coming together that I hope will continue as this new department gets launched.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to recognize Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. First of all, I want to thank Supervisor Campos for his work on this issue, Mr. Kazitsky as well. I will say in the beginning, I wondered a little bit about the proposal. In one regard in particular, for the past decade, we've been working hard as a city to formalize the adoption of our Housing First strategy towards reducing homelessness in our city, and had some concerns that the original proposal shifted us away from that a little bit by mandating navigation centers, which is the one in existence has been successful thanks to the support of a lot of people in this room, but are just a version of our traditional shelters, although I do think much, much better. And from my perspective, it's only as good as the housing that exists on the back end. And without that new housing, we could create 100 different navigation centers, but it wouldn't really make a difference. But I really want to thank Supervisor Campos for the changes that were introduced. I was briefed on them earlier, especially as it heavily emphasizes housing exits as a necessary component of our navigation centers. For example, very happy to see the changes mandate that the city compose a revenue plan for how we're going to help the 8,000 homeless individuals and families on our streets right now in regards to shelter and housing. And without new revenue for housing, our homeless population is going to continue to stagnate and residents continue to feel the pain points. In addition, the changes recognize that we can have a better resource and change our existing homeless shelters to make them navigation centers, which I think is a huge step in the right direction from our city's perspective. And I'm really excited about that, to be quite frank, and really thank Supervisor Campos again for the collaboration with Mr. Kazitsky, who I think is off to the races in this new job, as tough as that one is. This continues to be a team effort on homelessness here in San Francisco. I just want to thank everyone for being involved in this issue, and I look forward to supporting it.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Campos, my compliments to you. I appreciate the aggressiveness and the strong sense of urgency that you have brought to this conversation, a conversation that I consider that I certainly have been a part of for a while, and but definitely want to acknowledge the amendments, the legislation. I think that we are moving in a very good direction. I also want to recognize and formally welcome Jeff Kositsky. If I apologize for having my back to you, but I'll get that last name down eventually.
You nailed it.
Okay. Appreciate you being able to work with Supervisor Campos, and literally this man doesn't even have an office yet, and he's already got some legislation, co-authoring some legislation with you, Supervisor Campos, and he's got it on the books. I think this is an indicator that we're off to a really good start, and I appreciate Jeff being able to have some of that flexibility that he was concerned about maintaining and preserving, seeing that in the legislation. So I'm excited about this, and I can't wait for this to manifest, because we've got a lot of people that are on the street that are hurting that really do need our support. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Campos?
Just want to note that I mentioned all the people that have, given their insight and who have made it possible for us to get to this point. But I forgot to note this name, and that is Carolyn Goosen, my staff, who has just done an incredible job pulling it all together. And so, Carolyn, you're a superstar. Thank you for your incredible work.
Thank you. And seeing no other names on the roster, colleagues, can we take the motion to amend without objection? Without objection, the motion to amend passes unanimously. And on the item as amended, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell? Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr? Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The ordinance passes unanimously as amended on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can we please go to our 3 p.m. special order?
Items 36 through 39 comprise the special order at 3 p.m. for a public hearing of persons interested in the Planning Commission's certification of a conditional use authorization dated March 31st, 2016. Item 37 is the motion to approve the Commission's decision approving the conditional use. Item 38 is the motion to disapprove the Commission's decision. And item 39 is a motion to direct the preparation of findings related to the Board's disapproval of the proposed conditional use authorization.
Colleagues, we have before us now the appeal of a conditional use authorization for the project located at 313 through 323 Cumberland Street in District 8. And for this hearing, we know that there's been a resolution, but for the sake of going through the process, I know Supervisor Wiener will have some remarks and recommendations. In this hearing, we will consider whether or not to approve the Planning Commission's conditional use authorization to demolish a single-family structure and construct a new two-family structure at on a 5,700 square foot lot within an RH1 zoning district and the Dolores Heights Special Use District. And without objection, colleagues, I want to recognize Supervisor Wiener to make comments. We will conduct the hearing and move forward and specifically discuss the resolution of this matter. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you very much, Madam President and colleagues. As we, I think, alerted you yesterday, this appeal has been resolved with the agreement of both the appellant and the project sponsor. My office did conduct a mediation yesterday, and I want to thank the project sponsor and the appellants and other neighbors for participating in good faith after a very contentious process and being willing to sit down and engage in give and take and move towards this resolution. I also want to thank Annie Fryman in my office for her work in helping to move this towards a resolution. So, colleagues, what I would like to do is read into the record, and we will provide this in writing, the agreement that the parties entered into yesterday, and then at the conclusion of the hearing, I will make a motion essentially to adopt a modified conditional use or conditional use with additional conditions. So I'll just read this, Madam President. It's not very long. The project sponsors and appellants for the residential project at 323 Cumberland agree to resolve the conditional use appeal by adopting the following additional/amended conditions for approval. Install operable shutters at front facade of the second above grade floor, the master bedroom. Reduce thickness of the quote-unquote lip pending review from structural engineers during building permit phase. Increase front setback of the quote-unquote lip by 2 feet from its absolute position on current architectural plans. Increase front setback of first and second above grade glass facade walls by 1 foot from their absolute position on current architectural plans. Increase side setback along western edges of 311 Cumberland and adjacent 3 foot 8 inches of 660 Sanchez Street by 2 feet from its absolute position on current architectural plans. Apply greening/planting treatment to slatted screen framing of entryway, including the canopy above the entrance and the vertical screen adjacent to 311 Cumberland. So again, this was signed by both the project sponsor and the appellant yesterday, and I don't know, Madam President, I don't know if we want to have the project sponsor and the appellant to state their agreement on the record. I think that might make sense now or at the appropriate time.
So we will open up the hearing, and each we will conduct the hearing. We will also open it up to public comment and move forward. And at the time that they're recognized, they can state the specific agreements. So with that, colleagues, we will proceed with this hearing, and the appellant will have up to 10 minutes for its presentation or its representative. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, President Breed, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Bruce Bowen. I am the authorized agent for the appellant, the Dolores Heights Improvement Club, and I'm here to affirm that we reached agreement yesterday in mediation, and I agree with the terms of the agreement.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak in support of the appeal? Seeing none, support, you'll have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Anastasia Yovanopoulos. I live in District 8. I'm a long-time resident of the district. And this approval is going to set a precedent. I realize that they've settled, but merging 2 lots. Now, if you allow merging of 2 lots throughout the city, it's not really going to do anything to alleviate the problem of our housing stock being so limited. And also the other thing, I don't know if they settled on this, excavation, what they're doing is they're going to put two lots together to build. Now they reduced the size from 8,000 square feet, and they're going to build a little apartment down in the basement. Okay? It's going to be a historic exception to the laws on the book, and the modern glass structure is not compatible with the other homes on Cumberland. The excavation for the secondary unit is very concerning because the life of a large tree would be jeopardized when they dig. It's going to upset the roots, and the tree will die, and the birds and the nightingales who inhabit it are going to be disturbed. And the owners don't demonstrate that they're good stewards of the environment, and the project doesn't contribute to this city's dire housing problems. I had my say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in support of the appeal? Seeing none, public comment is closed. All right. I'm assuming that the members of the Planning Commission have no comments on this particular project since the settlement has been reached.
Thank you very much. I'm Anne Marie Rogers from the Planning Department. We will be waiving our presentation today, and through the chair, I would like to thank Supervisor Wiener for mediating this issue. And just maybe one point of clarity, that these new conditions would be in addition to the almost 5 pages of conditions of approval that the Commission imposed.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Wiener?
That's correct.
Thank you.
It's an addition and / modifications.
All right. With that, as the project sponsor, we'll have up to 10 minutes. Would the project sponsor like to make a comment?
Good afternoon, respected supervisors. I just want to affirm that we did reach agreement on our project yesterday. I want to thank the neighbors for actually working with us. We're very happy with the result. I also want to thank Supervisor Wiener and his office for helping mediate. Thank you very much for that. And we're very excited to be part of the Dolores Heights neighborhood and also to be adding housing stock to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak in opposition of the appeal at this time? Seeing none, public comment on that is closed. And with that, this hearing has been conducted and is now closed. Supervisor Wiener?
Thank you. Madam President, I'd like to make the following motion, which in effect will adopt a modified conditional use based on the settlement that the parties have reached. The specific motion will be the following. A motion to amend item 38 to disapprove the conditional use and to approve a conditional use with additional conditions as stated by me at the beginning of this hearing. And then to move item 38 as amended and to table item 37 and item 39.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Campos. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell? Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, item 38 as amended passes unanimously, and item 37 through 39 are tabled. All right, Madam Clerk, let's go back to our regular agenda, and can you please read public comment?
Madam President, we have items 40 through 43 yet to take.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get started on that.
Item 40 is a public hearing of persons interested in the Planning Commission certification of a conditional use authorization dated April 7th, 2016 for a proposed project at 32 Ord Street. Item 41 is the motion to approve the Planning Commission's decision to approve the conditional use authorization. Item 42 is a motion to disapprove that decision, and item 43 is a motion to direct the preparation of findings.
Okay, another one, Supervisor Wiener. Colleagues, we have before us an appeal of the conditional use authorization for this project at 32 Ord Street in District 8. For this hearing, we will be considering whether or not to approve the Planning Commission's conditional use authorization to permit a horizontal and vertical addition to a single-family home that would increase the existing square footage by more than 100% and result in square footage in excess of 3,000 square feet, while also increasing the legal unit count from 1 to 2 units within an RH2 zoning district. Without objection, we will proceed as follows. Up to 10 minutes for the presentation by the appellant or the appellant representative. Up to 2 minutes per speaker in support of the appeal. Up to 10 minutes for a presentation from the Planning Commission. Up to 10 minutes for the project sponsor or their representative, and up to 2 minutes per speaker in opposition of the appeal. And finally, up to 3 minutes for a rebuttal from the appellant or the appellant representative. And with that, this hearing is open, and I will now recognize Supervisor Scott Weiner.
Thank you, Madam President. The parties have jointly requested a one-week continuance of this item to June 21st, and I will also note that my office is actively mediating this dispute as well, and we hope to reach a resolution before next Tuesday's board meeting.
Okay, Supervisor Weiner has made a request for a continuance. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Campos. Is there any public comment on the continuance only? Seeing none, the public comment is now closed. All right, on the motion to continue this item to the meeting of June 21st, 2016, colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, this item will be continued to the meeting of June 21st, 2016. All right, Madam Clerk, now let's go to public comment.
At this time, the public may now address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board, to include the minutes and items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, items 48 and 49. Public comment will not be allowed when an item has previously been subject to public comment at a Board committee. Pursuant to the Board's rules, please direct your remarks to the Board as a whole and not to individual supervisors and not to the audience. Speakers using interpretation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify, and if you would like to display your document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and remove the document when the screen should return to live coverage of the meeting.
Okay, first speaker, welcome.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اسمي عبد الله مجاهد، وأنا هنا اليوم لأتحدث للمرة الثانية عن أسطورة الملاكمة التي لم تتكرر بعد. أتحدث اليوم عن البطل العالمي محمد علي كلاي الذي دخل في الديانة الإسلامية ولإيمانه بالله ورسوله، فقد توفى يوم جمعة ودفن أيضا يوم جمعة، ولقد ترك لنا تاريخ طويل ونظيف لا يمكن لنا أن نتجاهله، فتاريخه طويل ونظيف وأمين. Our San Francisco Supervisor, good afternoon. As you know, my name is Abdullah Mujahid, and today I would like to share with you the history of the grateful boxer man Muhammad Ali Clay. 52 years and 5 days exactly he coming to my country, and here the picture for him with our President Nasser, including here he kissed the picture for Nasser. The other picture I have in this moment to share with you, Aidan, when he visit my country pyramid in Egypt. And in the other picture you see with me today, when he go to the Muhammad Ali Mosque to pray as Muslim man. And here you see his picture when he visit and when he shake hand with the African people. Here his picture when he have 22 years. Another picture when he have 74 years. He older than me only for 3 months and 2 weeks. I am very proud to shake hand with him in Egypt and in Auckland. And I am very glad, and I thank his wife who allowed me to be around him for a while. Ladies and gentlemen, as Muslim, As Egyptian Muslim, I would like to give my sympathy for the family of the 49 people has been killed. I give my sympathy to our supervisor, Jane Kim, who cry for these people. If she knows them or she don't know them, everyone of our country, everyone Muslim doesn't like the violence happen this way. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you good luck, and I would like to thank you for giving me time to present myself, and I tell you what I have in my heart. Thank you.
What a lovely building. Hi, my name's Eric Morrow. I'm a resident of Guy Place, south of Market. The city has proposed a mini park to go on Guy Place. I really do not like the design of this park. It's inappropriate for our usage. Our residents have changed. We have children, we have dogs. This is nothing but concrete. The nearest playground to Guy Place is 5 blocks at Yerba Buena. The nearest dog park is 5 blocks in the opposite direction off of Beale. I propose that we keep the trees within that park. We turn the upper portion of that lot into a community garden, the lower portion of that lot into basketball courts. This will save us a great deal of money in the original installation of the park, as well as the overall maintenance cost of the facility after it's been created. What this map here does not show is that from east to west on this lot is a 64-foot change in grade. So for the city to install what is proposed here is going to cost significantly more than the $3 million that has been allotted for the creation of this park, and maybe the reason why we keep having contractors backing out of the proposal. A community garden, which will be maintained by the residents, does not cost you anything. A basketball hoop, a basketball court, a place where children in our city or in our community can actually learn how to ride a bicycle. We don't have that. It would be nice to be able to have our kids be able to play someplace safe on that hill. Thank you. I have a couple seconds, so I'm going to hand you a card. I have a really good idea on gun control that is cost neutral to our government. Please give me a call.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Jessica Evans, and I live on First Street, and the Guy Place Mini Park, well, it's not a park. There's nothing green about it, as you can see from the concrete design. It's going to cost more than $3 million to build, but I'm all for the trees staying because of that whole carbon thing. It's hard for me to, when I watch a nerd thing to do, but watch government TV, and I see the new legislation for the street trees going back to the city maintenance and the private property owners not having to deal with it. And then when Dan Flanagan comes up and talks about the whole, FUF, the Friends of the Urban Forest and stuff, and it's all about saving the trees and about the carbon and stuff. First Street's got a lot of traffic. It's always rush hour. It's really bad. And there's a little more oxygen probably that's healthier because these trees exist. And they're magnificent trees, and you should go see them. You probably have never even sat underneath these trees. They're magnificent. And it's just, and also, that whole carbon thing. But it's just hard to watch. Nothing ever gets done. You guys don't take any interest in it. But I hear all these words are all spoken about the carbon, and we're doing such a great job with all this. But if you check out these trees, 80-foot high, an ash tree, an avocado which produces fruit, and it's going to be cut down. They're majestic and they're significant trees. They should be nominated for a significant tree status. They qualify in every way. So, yeah, and the cost of the thing to build, it's just dumb. It's going to be all concrete. We're not into it. The Greater Rincon Hill Community Benefits District, I'll send a letter of approval. That does not represent the neighborhood's opinion. Most of them don't even know these trees are slated for demolishing, for coming down, and there's a lot of birds. It's just dumb. We don't want that. It's not a park. It's not green space. There's nothing meditative about it. You saw it. It's no good. And that's not even what we're going to get. We don't even know. Rec and Forest, Rec and Parks kind of doesn't really keep us in the loop about what's going on. So I wish you just go look at those trees. After all the words I hear about saving everything in the carbon stuff, just makes me really angry because it seems hypocritical unless I see action. So please pay attention to these trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes, my name is Salahakuya Chiantler, and I am the mother of Yalani Chinyamarinde, who was murdered January the 9th, 2015, with the quadruple homicide in Hayes Valley. The case is still unsolved. I'm just here to introduce myself and first give all respect and silence to the loved ones lives were taken in Florida. I do have an understanding to that loss because of my son. However, I just wanted to address an incident that happened at the Bill Clinton event at Joseph Lee on last week. I attempted to go, not even hearing it really advertised, about 3 a.m. in the morning, and wanted to go and to present a letter to former President Bill Clinton in regards to him sending me a postcard from the White House when he was in office doing the community work, my talk show for years. I gave him a CD of my jazz band, and he was very thankful. I just wanted to propose a question to him in regards to the homicides and the unsolved homicides, and also reparations for the African American community. When I attempted to go to the front of Joseph Lee, I had the banner, which you all know, of the 4 young men, and they told me I couldn't bring it in, and I understood that because we can't even bring it in City Hall, so I was very aware. They informed me that if I had any questions that I could ask. When I went down there, it was about 200 people there, the majority standing up. There was others that were sitting down, which I felt was very unfair. They told me it was VIP, and of course it was disabled. However, there were seats available, and a senior African-American woman was told in her 70s that she could not sit. A woman by the name of Sheila Brooks shouted out a question, what about the boys that are being murdered on the streets? And no one responded to her question. I didn't know her son was murdered. I didn't know who she was. And when I heard the Caucasian woman speak, she mentioned that Hillary is going to help us.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I just wanted to say is that when I asked the question,
Ma'am, your time is up.
concerning.
Ma'am, we'd like to give everyone the same amount of time to make their public comment. Madam President.
Boys were being murdered on the streets. Someone had tapped me on the shoulder.
Thank you, Ms. Sala. We can continue the conversation offline, but we need to allow everyone the same amount of time.
I can go to express what happened.
Yes. Can you just step to the side, please, and then we're going to move to next speaker, and then I'll be with you in just a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Madam President.
Good afternoon, supervisors, people in TV land, and in the audience. I would like to give my condolences to the family members in Florida. As long as cell phones exist, they will never, ever be forgotten. Because after the gunfire, that was the only ringing sound you heard. May I have the projector, please? Do you know who the enemy is? What that street name represents? Look what happened at the nightclub in Orlando, Florida. That name makes us less safe. The military and security has spent countless hours trying to defeat the group named ISIS. Speaking from the son of San Francisco, if all our city leaders can't have the street name removed and changed, then you may as well go on and pledge of allegiance to that street name, ISIS, in San Francisco. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Okay, good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Jenny. I'm a San Francisco resident, and I'm also a member of the Divine Land Marching Band. Some of our band members came in for the last few weeks and raised the issue of our band being rejected in the Japantown Cherry Blossom Festival Parade on April the 17th. So at 9:30 last night, our U.S. Congress unanimously passed House Resolution 343 regarding the Falun Gong issue. So The leading paragraph of this resolution says, expressing concern regarding persistent and credible reports of systematic state-sanctioned organ harvesting from non-consenting prisoners of conscience in the People's Republic of China, including from large numbers of Falun Gong practitioners and members of other religious and ethnic minority groups. House Resolution 343 was co-sponsored by 180 Congress members, including our local Congresswoman, Anna Eshoo, Zoe Lofgren, Jackie Speier, and Congressman Sam Farr and Mark DeSonia. It was also supported by all the members of the House last night. So the resolution highlights the key issue under this, Japantown parade exclusion, which we have been trying to bring to surface here in this meeting. So the forced organ harvesting was named as an evil never seen on this planet. That is the very reason the Chinese government tried to cover it up. So their approach is to make sure through the consulate and local proxies that the name of Falun Gong isn't seen or heard anywhere, such as a Chinatown New Year parade and Japantown parade. So the Congress, as a matter of fact, faces a lot of pressure from the Chinese government too when it drafted up this resolution. However, the Congress still stands firmly behind the value that this nation is all about. So I wish we, San Francisco, can share the same standing and the same commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Dear Supervisor, greetings. I came here to bring you what Congressman Chris Smith said last night at the Congress voting floor. Chris Smith is the chairman of Subcommittee on Africa and Human Rights and the chairman of Congressional Executive Committee on China. Here is a short piece of Chris Smith's talk last night.
I want to thank the Chairman Emeritus of the Full Foreign Affairs Committee for the defense of vulnerable persons in China, especially the Falun Gong, men and women who cannot speak for themselves, who have suffered unspeakable torture. Some have survived. And to the families who have lost loved ones in Chinese prison camps, the Laogai and detention centers that are sprinkled throughout all of China.
Thank you.
This legislation is an important step in bringing accountability and transparency to maybe one of the great crimes of the 21st century, the 17-year effort to eliminate Falun Gong practice from China. The Chinese government continues to insist that the accounts of religious persecution, forced abortion, arbitrary detention, and organ harvesting from Falun Gong practitioners are mere rumors. They refuse to even discuss these issues in regular diplomatic dialogue and regularly jail and disbar lawyers who try to defend Falun Gong practitioners who expose the abuses that are committed by government employees. Nevertheless, evidence is quickly mounting of the horrific crimes committed against Falun Gong practitioners, including this terrible practice of organ harvesting. Over the years, Congress has received credible information about this unethical and corrupt organ transplant system that operates in China. The Chinese are grossly negligent, but more likely grossly complicit in these crimes.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Excuse me, we need translation.
Okay.
尊敬的史昌士你们好，我在这里为你们带来英格尔众议员在昨天晚上在国会投票厅里面的发言。
Greetings, Supervisor. I came here to bring you what Congressman Elliot Ingo said last night at the Congress voting floor.
英格尔议员是众议院外交委员会民主党的 ranking member， 同时任职于能源与贸易委员会，担任7个 caucus 的共同主席。这是他昨天晚上的发言。
Congressman Ingo is a Democrat and is a ranking member of House Foreign Relations Committee. He also sits on House Committee on Energy and Commerce and leads many caucuses as co-chairman. The following is a very short excerpt of what he just said last night.
This
This resolution underscores troubling reports about the practice of organ trafficking, specifically in the People's Republic of China. And what's particularly unsettling is that this practice allegedly targets prisoners of conscience, including practitioners of Falun Gong and other religious and ethnic minorities. Non-consensual organ harvesting under any circumstance represents a gross violation of human rights. But these allegations are particularly egregious. Authorities at Chinese prisons targeting prisoners because of their religious beliefs and then making a profit by trafficking these victims' organs. I cannot think of hardly anything that's more disgusting than that. We have a responsibility to determine the scope of the problem and respond. We need to send a clear message that this sort of abuse is unacceptable.
Just so you know, I just want to let you know that I allowed you to deliver your public comment, but that was a little bit bending the translation rules. Next time, we won't be so forgiving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, welcome to the next speaker.
Greetings, President Breed and member of the Supervisors. I'm also here regarding the resolution, House Resolution 343 that was passed last night, 9:30 Eastern Time. And so here, Congresswoman Rose Lattenham from Florida is one of the leaders of on the resolution, and she's also the former chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee before terming out. And then this is her speech. I think it's very worth hearing about that.
Those who once looked to the United States to be the leader, to stand up and protect those suffering and who are being denied their most basic and fundamental rights, no longer view us as a voice for the voiceless, willing to stand up for those suffering around the world. Shame on us, Mr. Speaker, because this failure to promote our ideals and our principles, well, that leads to ruthless thugs to believe that they can get away with whatever they want, and ultimately it increases the suffering of the people that they exploit. The United States must once again make our core values and beliefs a central tenet of our foreign policy agenda in order to restore our credibility and to restore the faith that so many have in our ability to help bring about change for those who cannot protect themselves. Passing this resolution today, Mr. Speaker, sends a clear signal to China that the United States opposes its gross violations of human rights, particularly against the Falun Gong practitioners, and they are so peaceful. They're so full of composure. They pose no threat to China. And this bill sends a signal to countless others suffering around the world that the United States will once again make the protection of human rights a priority.
So this is the leaders of our Congress is dealing with the Falun Gong issue in Washington, D.C. I think that will help us, also remind us what we could do here. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the next speaker.
Thank you, Chair, and all the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 10 blocks and less than 40 years from sea level. I rise to comment on Pride Month 2016. Two simultaneous miracles happened recently. On 17th of May, Eric Fanning was confirmed by the United States Senate as Secretary of the Army. Secretary Fanning has a long and distinguished career of service to our country. Secretary Fanning also has a long and distinguished history as an openly gay man. This is the first miracle. The second miracle is that the vote was unanimous. It was a voice vote. All ayes and no nays makes it unanimous. Shh. Don't tell people that our government actually managed to function. It will spoil so many narratives. Two simultaneous horrors happened recently. Omar Mateen felt so much pain that he wanted to slaughter patrons of the Pulse Dance Club in Orlando. That is the first horror. The second horror is that he allowed himself to do it. For this month and forever, I will take pride in my gay community and our friends. We We will meet this most recent tragedy with dignity, compassion, with truth and resolve. We will not respond to terrorism by calling up terror. We will not respond to bullying by raising up a bully. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. I'd like to start by extending my heart to those who have lost loved ones or their lives in the tragedy in Orlando. And it was very much a tragedy. You know, it's very curious. It's very curious. There's this thing, I feel like there's this romanticization where a lot of people like to compare San Francisco to Paris, maybe something to do with Bohemia. But you know, I was getting calls all morning, starting at 6 a.m. from the streets of Paris, where law enforcement officers in Paris were shooting through civilians' bodies with grenades and chemical agents for a civil protest. And yet this same day, this body chooses to vote to accept federal Homeland Security OASI funding with no caveats, with no controls over its use, that is designed to provide for the very same sort of tactical operations as what happened in Paris. And of course, in the wake of what happened in Orlando, I know that there is this impetus to save face and appear tough on crime and tough on terror. But the fact of the matter is, no one is also talking about the fact that Omar Mateen spent nearly a decade working for G4S, a private security firm that specializes in exactly these kind of operations. We cannot end terror or atrocity by increasing militarism. I want to give a shout out to Supervisor John Avalos and specifically to the Arab Resource Organizing Committee for their proposals and their push to attempt to put some controls on reining in this militarism. It is not the right way. Policy should not be decided based on fear and fear-mongering, no matter in the face of what atrocity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm going to use this in a moment. Today, I want to speak about two birthdays. And they're both kind of fighters. You'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. One was Che Guevara. Today's Che Guevara's birthday. Now, the other birthday is Donald Trump. I mean, believe it or not, it's his birthday. So this in no way is a political endorsement. That's what I was told. But, you know, it's a current event, so I think I have the right to sing happy birthday to Donald Trump right here. It'll be quick, I promise you. Just one stanza. Okay, here we go. Happy hair day to you. We don't care what you do. Happy birthday, you blow hard. Happy birthday to you. Now, that's just a little song I made up with some of the people. But now this, in the spirit of Muhammad Ali, right? If you could project that and see what it is, it's just a little doodle I did. I don't know how we can reduce it down, but it's Donald the Trump versus Miss Clinton in a one round fight. But see, Obama's doing the speaking. And here's what in reference to Muhammad Ali, one of my favorite boxers of all time, this is what it would be. You ready? Remember he used to say, dance like a butterfly, sting like a bee, right? Well, see, Clinton... Oh, flow, I'm sorry, I didn't flow right. But I'll do it right. Okay, here we go. All right. Anyway, but for Miss Clinton, she would fly like a hawk, and Donald Trump would fly like Dumbo, maybe. I don't know, maybe the elephant, Dumbo. You didn't like that one? Because he's Republican. Are you speaking to me or are you speaking to me? I don't know. Anyway, he's Republican. And anyway, I'm trying to lighten up your day a little bit. You guys are doing a great job. And I love San Francisco. You have a good day. I had to sing to Donald. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Next speaker. No.
Hello. Is this a 2-minute time limit or 3-minute? My name is Daniel Pais. I will begin this by stating that I am not affiliated with any political campaign. The massacre that happened in Orlando has hit me pretty hard. As a queer Latino, for me, this is a double blow. It really bothers me when politicians from across the political spectrum, from Donald Trump on the right to self-styled progressives who are usually centrists, run to the media and start posturing for political gain. But then again, hypocrisy is a foundation for most politicians' careers. With rare exceptions like Bernie Sanders, for example, and there are some on this board whom I respect a lot, that is, the case is usually hypocrisy rules. What I hate is when someone says one thing and does another blatantly and is not held accountable. Like when somebody says they're for more affordable housing and diversity in our city, and I emphasize our city, but get most of their political contributions from developers and real estate interests. Like when they claim they are against racism and homophobia, yet stay silent when racist and anti-queer emails and texts surface within the SFPD. Like when they claim they support police reform, but they get endorsed by the police union. Like when they claim to be progressives, but still get endorsed by the likes of Barbara Kaufman and big fat checks from Ron Conway. Isn't that right, Scott Wiener?
Next speaker, please.
Yes, my name is Garmin Bell, and I'm here as a proxy for many of the people who live in the District 10 Hunters Point area. I spend a lot of my time in that area, and I find that certain services are denied people who live in that area. For instance, if you want a taxi, you call a taxi, they're not going to come up there. I doubt very seriously you'll find this up in some of the other more finer neighborhoods in San Francisco. And same thing with a pizza. You can't even get a pizza. I was over at my friend's house this past weekend, called a pizza, told we're not going to come up there. For whatever reason. To me, that seems like kind of like a redlining, but in this case, it appears to be kind of service redlining. All I'm saying here is that we need to identify those kind of merchants and let it be known that this particular type of service is not welcome because they're denying the people service in Hunters Point. They pay taxes just like anybody else. Maybe the supervisor can write those people a letter, let them know that that's not acceptable, or we could shame them in some kind of way or another. But I don't think it's acceptable because I think there should have the same services as people in other areas of San Francisco. So you guys need to seriously consider that. Maybe you all can get over there one day and call these various merchants and see what happens if they don't come. Go down to their business and say, that's wrong. Okay? I'm more incensed than anything else. Like I said, I don't live there, but I spend a lot of time there. So when I go there, I would like to be able to get a pizza or call a taxi or whatever. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Corey Smith. I work for the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. I'm also on the board of the Robert F. Kennedy Democratic Club and the District 5 Democratic Club. But just speaking on behalf of myself today in respects to item 48 and 49, which you're going to be hearing shortly, I'm a millennial that works for a nonprofit in this city. I think that makes me one of the many that have very little chance of buying a home given the current housing conditions. I really refuse to accept that this city and this region can't dig ourselves out of a housing crisis. That's why I jumped at the opportunity to work for my organization. I wanted to try to help people here. And I'm learning this on the fly as we go. And I think today's vote, at least for me, carries a lot of symbolism in terms of how we approach this issue. And in the middle of a housing crisis, to automatically say no to something that might help is confusing to me. Mayor Ed Lee has supported the legislation, Governor Brown's proposal with some amendments to try to improve. Mayor Shaft, my hometown of Oakland, did the same thing. The mayor of Los Angeles did the same thing. And there are certainly potential ways to improve the legislation, but I don't think we can get in the habit of saying no to potential answers. That is discouraging for a lot of people that spend a lot of time trying to help. And so I encourage you today to look at potential answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Tim Colon on behalf of the 300 members of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. And I want to say that we find it difficult to support the idea that San Francisco should exempt itself from producing more housing or even supporting the idea that, hey, we're just doing fine right here. And we would urge you not to pass item 48 and to approve item 49 instead. I made a visit last week to Sacramento and visited several key legislators' offices to try and learn ways that the Housing Action Coalition could support Governor Brown's by right housing proposal. And in one of them, when I mentioned that the city was proposing to exempt itself, I was met with raised eyebrows, and one of the key aides said, "You mean the city with the worst housing problems in the state of California?" Another said that if San Francisco were successful in doing this, wouldn't other cities around the state, like Santa Barbara and Long Beach and, say, in Marin, also want exemptions for themselves for reasons that they think are valid? The resolution in item 48 goes explicitly against the will of San Francisco's voters. Our terrible housing affordability was the justification for Prop C, the 2012 Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Prop K, the Affordable Housing Goals, Prop I, the 2015 Mission Moratorium, and Prop C that we passed last week on affordable housing requirements. The clear rationale behind all of them was that the city is simply not addressing its affordability and displacement problems. We recall that Prop K claimed that San Francisco is only producing 28% of its affordable housing needs, and therefore a 33% level was necessary. If I understand the resolution in item 48, it claims that we are now producing 35% affordable housing. Did our production ramp up that quickly, or since Prop K was passed, or did the methodology change for how the affordability is calculated? I urge you to reject 48 and adopt 49.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Supervisors, Jim Lazarus, San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. We support item 49. Every city and county in California must step up. This is a crisis not only here but throughout the state to have affordable housing for everybody that deserves and needs a place to live in this state and in this city. You know, San Francisco set the stage for today's housing crisis in the early 1970s when we downzoned virtually every residential neighborhood in the city. But during that time, San Francisco's population dropped from 800,000 people in 1950 to under 650,000, or around 650,000 people in 1970. Today, we have another 850,000 people here. There are only 3 cities, I think, really north of the Sun Belt, with more people living in them today than 1950. New York, Seattle, and San Francisco. Those other cities are outbuilding us by multiples of units. We have to take every step in an arsenal to develop affordable housing, market rate housing, workforce housing for a diverse population. We urge you to reject any steps that put San Francisco on record against needed legislation in Sacramento that will help San Francisco and every other community in the state step up and build the housing that's required. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Rob Poole. I'm just speaking as a resident today. I live in District 5, just off the corner of Haight and Webster. I'm urging you to reject or not support item 48 and support item 49. My quick background, so I was born in San Francisco, spent my baby years on California and Golf. My parents quickly decided it was too expensive to raise us here, so I moved to the suburbs. And I grew up in the suburbs in Lafayette and then a suburb in San Diego where there's absolutely no diversity. I had to drive everywhere, and maybe coincidentally, they don't build any housing either. But I made my way back here about a little over 2.5 years ago. First year and a half, lived in 5 different places, a couple sublets, 1 SRO without a kitchen, and then made my way into a rent-controlled unit with a kitchen and some friends. I believe that if I'm going to have a family someday and I want to raise them in a city where it's diverse and they can be exposed to lots of different kinds of people, I believe one of the solutions is we're going to have to make it a lot easier to build housing of all types. And that means creating certainty for housing that meets the code the city sets forth. That's market rate housing, that's subsidized affordable housing, and everything in between. And I can't agree with the notion that we should be exempt from Governor Brown's measure because we're doing such a good job relative to other Bay Area municipalities in our housing production. And I have to say that if that's the measure we're going to go off of, the bar's been set pretty low. The Bay Area in general is just terrible at building housing, and we're not doing anything close to even meeting the needs of residents that live here and people that are moving here. I think Governor Brown's measure, it could be improved and it's something to work on. That's why I support the amended resolution introduced by Supervisor Wiener. But we should just work on making this work for us and making it work for the residents of San Francisco. It's not something we should reject. So again, I urge you to support item 49 and reject item 48. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Hanlon. I live in the Mission, and I co-founded a housing nonprofit to make housing more affordable in San Francisco. I'm also here today to ask you to reject item 48, this cruel farce of a resolution drafted by Supervisor Peskin, which seeks to exempt San Francisco from the governor's housing streamlining proposals by citing our alleged triumphs in affordable housing. San Francisco is a disaster for affordable housing. Rather than recite a litany of citations for academic articles that show how multi-stage discretionary housing approval processes make housing more expensive and worsen racial and economic segregation, I want to talk about the absurdity of this position. Saying our city has the best affordable housing policies in the Bay Area is, to rip off a Game of Thrones joke, to claim to have the biggest cock in the unsullied army. It's a meaningless boast that belies the miserable condition of San Francisco renters. It's the type of statement that exemplifies the lie of San Francisco. It's a flattering lie, at least to those of us who identify as women and men of the left, that we're welcoming to newcomers and in one of the richest places on the planet that we take care of our own. But no, today San Francisco is more of a Fox News-style caricature of limousine liberals, a place where wealthy so-called progressives offer rhetorical support for the poor and the middle class, while advancing policies that enrich the already rich and immiserate those without housing equity. So I ask you today to take a stand against cynicism, to support evidence-based policies to make housing more affordable, to lessen racial and class segregation, to give more people access to economic opportunity, to support the governor's proposal for by-right housing, to make good on the promise of San Francisco. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to listen to us all today. I know this is probably kind of a tough job just sitting there and having people come up. I wanted to say my name is Brooke Weirs. I'm a teacher here in San Francisco. I currently spend about 75% of the money that I spend on housing, which is a pretty substantial amount, I'd say. I am here to support Article 49 and oppose 48, and I would encourage you to do so as well. I would like to point out a couple things. The percentages that are being focused on, the 25% affordable housing, is probably not the percentage that you really want to pay attention to, because, I mean, you could just have 4 houses and 1 out of 4 would make 25%. I think the percentage that you really want to pay attention to is the vacancy rate. So if you're going to, build any legislation, you want to probably incorporate vacancy rate as opposed to the percentage of affordable housing. The second thing I wanted to say, the requirement about having construction start in 180 days is probably a little bit off target in the sense that a lot of times it takes a while to get lending ready for construction. And my guess is what you'll find is that you're kind of in a merry-go-round where people get approved and then they can't quite make that 180 days and then they have to come back for more approval. And it honestly could just make you guys' job a lot harder because you're going to have more work to do. Lastly, I'd like to comment on local discretion. I think local discretion on the surface seemed like a really good idea. It sounded like, hey, let's have people who work locally kind of figure out things that are going to work for them. Unfortunately, I think the process has kind of been hijacked by special interest groups, people that, frankly, I mean, people like myself are off at our jobs. We're working during the day, and we don't always have time to come in and complain about trees and stuff like that. But I think the truth of the matter is that probably what you really want to do is see if you can work together and find some way that you can work with Governor Brown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Alyssa Kias, and I'm here representing SPUR. I wanted to acknowledge the really powerful reading of all of the names of Orlando victims earlier today. That was really moving. But I'm here to speak to items 48 and 49, the proposed resolutions before you related to the governor's by-right housing approvals budget trailer bill. SPUR urges you to support the concepts of the governor's proposal. And while there are many causes of the housing crisis, chief among them is the fact that our local land use system has made it extremely difficult to add housing supply. As you well know, proposals to add housing in San Francisco, as well as the broader Bay Area, are often met with years of delay and sometimes after that, disapproval. While San Francisco does an impressive job of funding and building permanently affordable subsidized housing, there's no way we'll ever have enough money to build enough housing for everyone who wants a subsidized affordable unit. We simply cannot address the affordability crisis unless we're simultaneously investing in housing subsidies while at the same time changing our planning system to create housing more efficiently. Under the governor's proposal, San Francisco will still have significant control over land use, and there will still be significant process, public input, and decision-making by elected officials. It'll simply take place at the planning level rather than at the individual project level. As my colleague Christy Wong said last week, this reform is important for the environment, for social justice, for livability, and for retaining San Francisco's diversity. Less pressure on our city and region's housing supply will lead to reduced displacement and greater affordability in our city, both directly through its impacts on our planning process and indirectly through its impacts on the housing supply in other Bay Area cities. SPUR urges you to support the governor's proposal and the resolution before you that proposes productive and proactive amendments rather than opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Supervisors. Donald Disnup here, resident of the city of San Francisco. First of all, I stand with Orlando, and I urge this body of civil government to consider gun control, taking weapons of war off the streets of our city, and also be aware and be that we are vulnerable to a possible attack with the SF Pride weekend coming up in the next few weeks. I am here to urge you to oppose item number 48 and support item number 49. The Bay Area has more vehicles per square mile than LA. San Francisco has more cars per square mile than any other U.S. city. Worker commute times are longer here in the county of San Francisco than LA County. NIMBYs love to drive their everyday day jobs and errands and not use public transportation. They feel entitled to a certain lifestyle. Silicon Valley workers instead use public transportation. Silicon Valley has added 385,000 new jobs over the last 5 years, but have only added 60,000 dwelling units. This sweetheart deal of item number 48 protects the elitist NIMBY homeowner Sunday drive lifestyle and gives a free pass of exemption to Silicon Valley cities from the responsibilities of building new apartments and condos from the jobs it creates. Please oppose item number 48. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Projector. Yeah, I take this occasion to talk about please. Bed bugs of a two-legged kind. This is my last shout-out to District 6 Supervisor Jane Kim about a problem that we brought to her attention about a year ago. And this is my first shout-out to the board en banc to investigate the slumlording activities of John Stewart Company in tandem with nonprofit royalty Episcopal Community Services. What am I talking about? Episcopal Community Services tandems with John Stewart Company to slumlord over 7 or more SROs in the city out of total city funding of almost 100%. Now, what are they doing? You know, they do not spend the funds. They spend as little as possible, you know, in housing services and support services. What else do? They constantly harass tenants. You have homeless people getting housing, and then what they do is they harass tenants and try to get them back into the streets. Okay, and what else do? They hire do-nothing caseworkers and desk clerks, and then they do not do any maintenance at all or very minimal maintenance on the units. Let's have these bed bugs investigated either by you or by the appropriate agency, and let us not go into a lawsuit that will embarrass everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Sonia Traus. I founded the SF Bay Area Renters Federation. I'm here to ask you to vote yes for Scott Wiener's resolution regarding the governor's buy right bill and no on Peskin's resolution. I've been doing this organizing in favor of more housing for a couple of years, and one thing that everybody agrees on is that the rest of the Bay Area needs to do its share, that Palo Alto and other peninsula cities have been adding jobs and not adding homes, and that's really not acceptable. So I was shocked to see that Peskin's resolution would exempt Palo Alto from the governor's as of right bill. I don't think that this body agrees that Palo Alto is doing a great job on housing. That's because the criteria in Peskin's resolution is that if a city is building 25% affordable, then they should be exempted. Well, such bastions of affordability and access as Los Altos Hills are building 50% affordable. Monte Sereno builds 50% affordable. That's because they only build 10 units a year. So this is a ridiculous criteria. This criteria has nothing to do with whether a city is providing enough housing for its growing workforce. And I just don't think that San Franciscans agree that 42% of peninsula cities, that's how many cities would be exempted by the criteria in this resolution. Bay Area cities, 42% of Bay Area cities. Most of the Bay Area is not really doing their job. So if you want a criteria to exempt, look at vacancy rate. As the earlier commenter said, you know, if a city has enough housing, then that means that they're going to have a high vacancy rate, like 8%. All right, thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Dan Posh, and I care about affordable housing in San Francisco. I'll keep my comment super brief. I support Scott Wiener's proposal, and I oppose that of Supervisor Peskin. Proposals that limit new housing supply make me sad because they're often done in the name of progressivism, but they really represent the interests of incumbent property owners. I think that if we want a truly progressive housing policy, the economics of supply and demand mean that we have to do something about the constricted housing supply. So build more housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Madam President, and to all the Board of Supervisors. My name is Reverend Ayana Moore. I first of all want to give my condolences to all the suffering in Orlando, and I stand in solidarity with them. I'm here simply to ask that you support number 48, the resolution by Supervisor Peskin. I was here last week with one of my congregants, and I watched how Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Wiener, in my opinion, valiantly tried to work towards a compromise for a very difficult issue. I know it's difficult, but on behalf of all those I serve here in San Francisco, I have strong roots I live in District 1, Supervisor Eric Marr's district. I have strong family roots in the Bayview and in the Western Addition. And I ask that you strongly consider and pass number 48. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Neil Trembath. I'm a resident of District 4. I'm here subsequent to an extended conversation today with Supervisor Tang's legislative aide, Ray Law. Mr. Law was very helpful in helping me resolve a problem with my mail-in ballot, which had been disqualified by the Department of Elections due to me being bad at writing my own signature. In the process, even though my problem was resolved, we found a larger problem with the disqualified ballot process, Mr. Law asked the Department of Elections he asked to speak with Mr. Arntz, but Mr. Arntz unfortunately was not available to him. The deadline to correct any disqualified ballots is tomorrow at 5 p.m., so this is a matter of some timeliness. Mr. Law then felt very strongly that I should go talk with Assemblyman Ting's office about the issue. And so I spoke at length with Mr. Ting's legislative aide, Frances Fortini. She was also very helpful and very interested in resolving the problem legislatively, and strongly suggested that I come back down to the local level to see whether a discussion between the local government and Mr. Arndt's office couldn't resolve the problem with disqualified ballots. The problem with the ballots is that the notice is provided in an arbitrary fashion, and sorry, now I'm lost my train of thought. Some voters are told that their ballots have been disqualified, and others are not told that their ballots have been disqualified. And as Ms. Fortini pointed out, many voters will not be aware that their ballot was disqualified until after the deadline.
Thank you, sir.
Appeal the disqualification. So she asked me to come here to
Thank you, sir. Your time is concluded.
ask this body
Next speaker, please.
to discuss a resolution
Thank you, sir.
with Mr. Arntz. I have more to say on this.
We strive to give everyone the same amount of time to testify.
I understand that. I appreciate the time that you've given me.
Thank you kindly. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Can you start over the time, please?
Hi, my name is John Schwark, and I'm here to speak against item 48 today. I'd like to echo some of the earlier concerns that reaching 25% of total housing production as affordable isn't the right benchmark of success, because 25% of 4 is 1. We could build 1 unit and still succeed. Rather, I'd like to see us either concentrate on total percentages of RHNA in affordable housing. So if we reached 100% of our RHNA for a period, maybe a city could get exempt. That would be one possible thing, or 100% of all 3 categories of RHNA. Or alternately, what other people have said, which is a vacancy rate or a median rent that was affordable to median income. Those would be actual success as opposed to fake success, faux success. In general, I do support item 49. I do think that there's some amendments that we can get our group to get into the legislation at the state level that would be helpful and would tweak it for us better and tweak it for everybody better. But anything that is just an excuse for cities around the state to raise 25% affordable requirements when they're not building any housing, that's going to do nothing for housing. That's just going to kill the positive effects of this bill. And we should be using this bill as a way to trade up for more bond money for affordable housing. The last thing I'd like to say is, even on 49, I actually oppose no demolition. So I think it's much more important, instead of no demolition, we should have 100% replacement of affordable and rent-controlled units, and we need to locally figure out a way to shuffle people out of those units into temporary units while we build more housing. That's on us, not on the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
And welcome to the chamber, former supervisor, Judge Quentin Kopp. Thank you for being here today. Next speaker, please.
I'm not speaking.
Hi, my name is Greg Ferenstein. I'm a San Francisco resident. I'm here to speak out in favor of Scott Wiener's proposal that San Francisco not exempt itself from Governor Brown's proposal. A few months ago, I actually did a poll of San Francisco residents asking about as of right. And what I found was a striking statistic, that 60% of San Franciscans would support as of right if it meant more affordability, but that number dropped to 40% if you asked, did you vote in an off-year election? I'm supporting Supervisor Wiener's bill because a majority of San Franciscans are at a point where housing is so bad that they're looking for any solution, and this is a good one. I was canvassing yesterday for an as-of-right related bill on the streets of San Francisco, and I talked to a number of longtime residents. Some of them were born in San Francisco. And I said, if San Francisco had to become like Manhattan, or whatever, any measure, if that made it more affordable, would you support that law? Unanimously, almost every one of them said yes. I don't think it has to go to that point or anywhere near it, but I do know for a fact that San Francisco is at a tipping point. Something is going to happen. Eventually, proposals like the one Supervisor Wiener is supporting are going to become law. It's just a matter of whether we get on the right side of history and the majority of San Franciscans. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The overhead, please.
SFG TV, thank you.
Can that be read? Tom Gilberti. There's part of a plan that I submitted in October last year for housing. Hopefully can be read. Last week I didn't know, I couldn't say I was, it was voting day on voting day. I didn't know I could say, mention Hillary with her establishment. I didn't know I could not say Bernie with his crowds. I did not know I could not say two slates were running and the pleasure of a choice, or how at least 1/3 of the electorate is now independent and that independence is growing. I never got to say, here we are and we need to open up a clear channel, an avenue for independent voters to raise their voice in primary elections and in the normal elections. The two-party system is kind of defunct. Right here, right now, within the city and the county, it's a seminal moment, a time of creativity and imagination, new policies, procedures, directions, new algorithms for police, for housing, for transportation. Our whole social network is up in the air, and we have a possibility to change the power away from real estate developers profiteering to creating healthy communities. We need the new direction. We need a sustainable equilibrium. We need to evolve. We need to think in terms of what a healthy community is and not profiteering. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Madam Clerk, let's go to the items without reference to committee.
Items 48 and 49 are being considered for adoption without reference to committee. A single roll call vote may enact these items. A member may object, have it severed, and have it considered separately.
Supervisor Peskin?
Items 48 and 49.
All right. Let's start. Madam Clerk, let's read both item 48 and 49 together.
Item 48 is a resolution to urge the San Francisco Legislative Delegation to amend or oppose the by right housing approvals proposed trailer bill in recognition of San Francisco's local planning tools and significant contributions to regional housing development. Item 49 is a resolution to urge the San Francisco Legislative Delegation to work to amend the by right housing approvals proposed trailer bill in recognition of San Francisco's severe housing crisis and existing obstacles to sufficient regional and statewide housing creation.
Supervisor Peskin?
Thank you, Madam President. Last week, Supervisor Wiener and I agreed that we would continue the item 48 for 1 week so that we could consider it with item 49. Yesterday, the mayor of San Francisco wrote a letter to the governor of the state of California suggesting a number of amendments to the trailing legislation. This has been an evolving situation in Sacramento. Our state senator, Mark Leno, has been actively involved in this matter, and as it has evolved, I think we are actually not very far apart. Many of the things listed in the mayor's letter are mentioned both directly and indirectly in items 48 and 49. As a result of the mayor's letter and the evolving discussions in Sacramento, I have an amendment of the whole on item 48. I think it is very important that the city try to speak with one voice as we go to Sacramento. And as things have evolved, I think the performance-based exceptions have become less important. We now have actual time to discuss this because this trailing bill is going to trail later into the summer. So what I'd like to do is offer these amendments, which in many ways are similar to what the mayor has set forth in his letter. I believe Supervisor Wiener and I agree on a prohibition of the demolition of existing housing. I would like to have a minimum baseline for as-of-right approval consisting of a set local inclusionary housing standard plus a premium increases determined by technical analysis, and a requirement that approved development projects begin construction with 180 days of approval. The mayor has also indicated that he would like to have a construction time limit, and that approval of major developments continue to allow for some level of public review and local discretionary approval as is currently provided by local laws. The mayor reflects that as well. So with that, I would like to offer an amendment of the whole of item 48, and if Supervisor Wiener is willing, send items 48 and 49 to committee, where hopefully we can merge them together and speak with one voice on behalf of the city and county.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Peskin has made a motion to amend, and Supervisor Peskin, I know I received those amendments, but were they circulated to members of the board?
Yes, and I have additional copies redlined if anybody would like redline copies.
Okay, and it was seconded by Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. It was good to see the mayor's letter supporting the by right legislation, or it's called as of right, so as not to confuse it with the supermarket. The as of right legislation, and also, as noted before, Mayor Libby Schaaf of Oakland and Mayor Garcetti of Los Angeles have also come out in favor. So what we're seeing is a growing trend of mayors of major cities in California who are leading cities that are in just terrible housing crises, saying that we need change, and it's a statewide problem. This is not a city-by-city problem, and unless we're all in it together as a state, we're not going to solve it city by city. We have to do it together, which is why it's important that the governor made this proposal, even though it is not a perfect proposal and it does need to be amended. Last week, Supervisor Peskin's resolution that was up before the board and then continued opposed the legislation, and also asked for a carve-out based not on the number of units or the number of affordable units produced by a city such as San Francisco, but rather based on the percentage of overall units that were affordable or below market rate. And of course, a high percentage of a low number yields very few units and will not help our housing crisis. The alternative resolution that I offered asked for, rather than opposition, asked for our city to work with the governor to try to improve the as-of-right legislation, and specifically to focus it on the number of units produced, to acknowledge that we do not want this legislation to be a tool to demolish housing. We don't want it to undermine labor, environmental, design standards. But what we do want it to do, at least what I would like it to do, is to make sure that if there is zoning for a certain number of units, we don't have arbitrary action through a discretionary process to force down the number of units. If a parcel is zoned for 20 units, no more of this, we're going to force it down to 8 units. And that, to me, is the fundamental issue, making sure that we don't see arbitrary reductions below what the zoning allows, while allowing for good design review, while allowing for or opposing the demolition of housing and so forth. And so that was the resolution that I offered. And to me, that is the fundamental issue. It's about the number of units produced, because we need more housing of all sorts in San Francisco and in California. So it's unclear to me that either of these resolutions will have enough votes to pass today. And so I think it does make sense for both of these resolutions to go to committee together to see if we can hash out a resolution where the city speaks with one voice. But I will say that as much as I would like to achieve consensus on this, and it would be wonderful if we can achieve consensus on this, I think that there are certain bottom lines, for me at least, and for a lot of people, and that matters a lot. But I think it does make sense to send both of these items to committee together to see if we can thoughtfully work out a resolution.
Thank you. So with that, colleagues, can we take the amendments for item number 48 only without objection? Without objection, those amendments pass. And we will now send item 48 and 49 to committee. Supervisor Cohen?
I'm glad to see that we're sending the items to committee. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Supervisor Cohen. And just to Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Wiener, I appreciate you both willing to work together on this particular issue. We know how very important this is. The need for housing production in the city is definitely great, and I want to make sure we as a city stand together on any policy directive we make, and more importantly, we want to do everything we can to avoid stopping housing production that we so desperately need, especially for affordable housing. So thank you both for your willingness to work together to try and send one message to Sacramento, and that is definitely going to be important moving forward. So thank you again. With that, looks like we are at the end of our agenda. Madam Clerk, can you please read the in memoriams?
On behalf of Supervisor Farrell, for the late Mitzi Campbell. On behalf of Supervisor Peskin, for the late Giovanni Giotta, Papagianna, and Mike Shawa. And at the suggestion of Supervisor Campos and Supervisor Kim, and on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, for Carla Johnson. And at the suggestion of Supervisor Cohen, on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, and Supervisor Campos, for all the victims that perished in the tragic massacre in Orlando, Florida.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, this brings us to the end of our agenda. Madam Clerk, is there any further business before us today?
That concludes our business for today.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are adjourned.